Greg Daniels had exactly 15 seconds before his mother's security team broke down the bathroom door. He could hear them on the other side. Heavy boots, radio static, the click of weapons being checked. Weapons. His own mother had sent armed security to drag him to a brunch date. "Mr. Daniels?" The head of security, Davidson, pounded on the door. "Sir, your mother is waiting. Miss Montgomery and her family are already at the restaurant. You need to come out now." Greg looked around the bathroom frantically. He was on the 20th floor of his own penthouse. There was one window, but unless he'd suddenly developed the ability to fly, that wasn't an option. Think, think, think. His eyes landed on the air vent. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. Bang, bang, bang. "Mr. Daniels, we're coming in on the count of 3. Greg yanked the vent cover off the wall and stuck his head inside. Too small. Way too small. 1. Something clicked in his brain. The service elevator. The one his mother didn't know about. The one he'd had installed specifically for moments like this. 2. Greg bolted out of the bathroom, sprinting through his bedroom toward the hidden panel in his walk-in closet. 3. The bathroom door crashed open just as Greg slipped through the panel and slammed it shut behind him. He could hear Davidson yelling, "He's not here! Check the closet! Check everywhere!" Greg didn't wait. He hit the elevator button and prayed it would come fast enough. The elevator dinged open. Greg jumped inside and pressed the garage level button about 17 times. "Come on, come on, come on." The doors closed just as he heard Davidson shout, "There, the elevator." Greg watched the floor numbers drop. 20th floor, 19th, 18th. His phone buzzed. Text from his mother. "Gregory Daniels, if you embarrass me one more time, I will cut you out of this family so fast." He didn't read the rest. He knew the threat. He'd heard it 100 times. But here's the thing about Greg Daniels that his high society mother never understood. Before his father struck it rich in real estate 15 years ago, Greg grew up in rural Georgia. He knew how to hunt, fish, fix cars, and most importantly, how to run. The elevator hit the garage. The doors opened. Greg's Audi R8 was parked right where he left it, keys in the ignition because he'd planned this escape route 3 days ago. He jumped in, fired up the engine, and burned rubber out of there so fast he left skid marks. In his rearview mirror, he saw 3 black SUVs racing after him. "Y'all really don't give up, do you?" Greg laughed, swerving through Atlanta traffic. He had no plan, no destination. He just knew he needed to disappear for a few hours until his mother calmed down and called off her goon squad. Greg took a sharp right turn, cutting through downtown. The SUVs followed. Left turn. They followed. He needed to go somewhere crowded, somewhere his mother's people wouldn't think to look. And that's when he saw it. West Side Market. A big open-air pavilion full of vendors, shoppers, and chaos. Perfect. Greg whipped into the parking lot, ditched his car behind a delivery truck, grabbed a random Braves cap from his backseat, and walked quickly into the market. The smells hit him first. Fried food, fresh collard greens, somebody's grandmother's peach cobbler. For a second, it reminded him of summers in rural Georgia before everything changed. "There he is," Davidson's voice carried across the parking lot. Greg's heart jumped. He ducked into the crowd, weaving between vendors. He needed a hiding spot. Now, his eyes scanned the market. Vegetable stand? Too open. Clothing booth? Too obvious. Then he saw her. A woman at a fish fry stand in the corner, her back turned, completely focused on filleting a massive catfish with the kind of precision that made it look like art. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a Carter's Fish Fry t-shirt and jeans. And when she turned her head slightly to grab something, Greg's breath caught, even from a distance, even with her profile. There was something about her that made his chest tight, like he'd seen her before, known her before, which was impossible. Greg didn't think. He just moved. Jasmine Carter was having a perfectly good morning until some stranger invaded her workspace. "We're not open yet," she called out without turning around. She was right in the middle of butterflying a catfish, and that required concentration. Her left eye, the one permanently sealed shut from the scar, meant she had to be extra careful with depth perception. "Come back in 20 minutes. Please." The voice was deep, urgent, and way too close. "I really need your help." Jasmine spun around, her filleting knife still in her hand, and froze. The man standing in her workspace was tall, well-built, with dark skin, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes that looked both desperate and amused at the same time. He was wearing designer jeans that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and a white t-shirt that fit him like it was custom-made. But that's not what made her freeze. It was the feeling. Like a punch to the chest. Like recognition without understanding. Like her body remembered something her mind had forgotten. She'd never seen this man before in her life. So why did looking at him feel like coming home? Greg was having the exact same problem. The woman in front of him was beautiful. Genuinely, arrestingly beautiful, despite the jagged scar that ran over her left eye, sealing it shut. Her right eye was a deep brown that seemed to look straight through him. Her face was heart-shaped, her lips full. Her cheekbones high, just like... He cut off the thought before it could drag him under. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped him cold. It was the way looking at her made his heart skip. Made something in his chest pull tight. Made him feel like he'd been searching for her without knowing it. Greg started, then stopped. "Have we met before?" Jasmine blinked, shaking off the weird feeling. "Pretty sure I'd remember a guy in $1,000 jeans invading my workspace." "Right. Sorry." But Greg couldn't shake it. Couldn't shake the feeling that he knew her. They stared at each other for a long moment, both feeling something neither could explain. "Excuse me?" Jasmine finally said, raising an eyebrow. "Did I invite you back here?" "No. But..." Greg glanced over his shoulder toward the parking lot where several large men in suits were walking through the market looking like they meant business. "I really need to not be seen right now." "What, you running from the cops?" Jasmine gripped her knife a little tighter. She might be small, and she might only have one working eye, but she'd been working in this market for 3 years. She could handle herself. "Worse," the man said with a slight smile that did weird things to Jasmine's stomach. "My mother." Jasmine blinked. "Your what?" "My mother. She's trying to force me to go on a date with some woman I've never met, and she sent her security team to drag me there." "Security team?" Jasmine looked at the suited men more carefully. They did have that private security look. Earpieces, rigid posture, expensive suits. "Who is your mother, the president?" "Sometimes she thinks she is." Before Jasmine could respond, one of the security guys called out, "Excuse me, miss. Have you seen a tall black man, about 6'2", expensive clothes running through here?" The man beside Jasmine tensed. Jasmine looked at the security team. Then she subtly glanced at the stranger in her workspace. She had no idea who this man was or what he was really running from. But she'd been running her stand in this market for 3 years, and she knew one thing. She didn't like people who came around throwing their weight around like they owned the place. And these security guys, they had that energy all over them. Plus, there was something about the way the stranger looked at her. Not with pity for her scar like most people did. Not like she was damaged. Just like she mattered. Jasmine made a split-second decision. "A tall brother in expensive clothes?" She called back to the security team. "Yeah, I saw him. Went that way, toward the east exit. Looked like he was in a real hurry." The security team immediately changed direction, practically jogging toward where Jasmine pointed. The man beside her let out a long breath. "Thank you. You have no idea how much I..." "Don't thank me yet." Jasmine cut him off, turning to face him with her arms crossed. The knife was still in her hand, and she made sure he noticed. "Now you're going to tell me what's really going on, or I'm calling those guys back. And trust me, I can whistle real loud." The man held up his hands in surrender. "Fair enough. My name is Greg Daniels." He said it like she should recognize the name. She didn't. "Okay, Greg Daniels," Jasmine said slowly. "Why are you running from your mother's security team in the middle of Westside Market at 7 in the morning?" "Because if they catch me, they'll drag me to a brunch where my mother is trying to set me up with her friend's daughter. It's the 4th one this month." Jasmine stared at him. "Your mother is setting you up on blind dates?" Forced engagements, technically. Forced. Jasmine couldn't help it. She laughed. What is this, 1820? People still do arrange marriages? My mother does. Greg ran a hand over his face, and Jasmine noticed how his fingers trembled slightly, like he was genuinely stressed. She thinks because I inherited my father's company. I need a wife from an appropriate family to complete the picture. And you don't want that? I don't want my mother picking my wife like she's shopping for a new car. Jasmine studied him. Despite his expensive clothes and obvious wealth, there was something genuine about his frustration. Something real. All right, she said finally. You can hide back here until they're gone, but if you touch anything, I'll fillet you just like this catfish. We clear? Greg grinned. It completely transformed his face from attractive to utterly charming. Crystal clear. And Jasmine's heart did a weird flip she absolutely did not want to analyze. For the next 20 minutes, Greg crouched behind Jasmine's prep table while she set up her stand for the day. He kept staring at her. Not at her scar, which most people couldn't stop looking at, but at her hands, her face, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. How long have you been doing this? He asked, watching her arrange the fish in the display cooler with the same precision she used to cut them. 3 years, Jasmine answered shortly. She was trying to ignore him, but it was hard when someone kept talking, and harder when that someone made her skin feel too warm. You're really good with that knife, she shrugged casually. I should be. I use it every day. No, Greg insisted, shaking his head. I mean really good, like professionally trained good. The way you angle it, the pressure control, that's not something you just pick up. Jasmine's hands paused for just a second. Something flickered in her mind, a flash of bright lights, sterile smells. A different kind of knife, hands that weren't hers but were. A voice saying, steady hands, steady heart. Pain lanced through her head, sharp and sudden. You okay? Greg asked, noticing her wince. I'm fine, Jasmine said quickly, shaking off the weird feeling. Just a headache. She didn't tell him about the amnesia. She didn't tell anyone about that if she could help it. 3 years ago, she woke up on the side of a road with no memory of who she was or where she came from. A massive head injury. A scar that sealed her left eye shut, and nothing else. The only thing she knew was what some kind stranger had told her before leaving her at a bus stop. You're from the fish village. You're a fish seller. And somehow that felt right. Working with fish felt natural. Like her hands knew what to do even if her brain didn't remember learning it. Does it hurt? Greg asked quietly. Jasmine touched her scar self-consciously. Not anymore. Just looks scary, I guess. It doesn't look scary, Greg said, his voice soft. It looks like you survived something. Jasmine's breath caught. Nobody ever said it like that. Like her scar was a badge of honor instead of something to pity. Coast is clear, Big Joe called out from his vegetable stand across the way. Those suit guys just left in a hurry. Greg stood up, brushing off his jeans. Thank you, seriously, I owe you one. You don't owe me anything, Jasmine said, trying to ignore the way her heart was beating faster as he stepped closer to her. Just maybe don't lead your mother's security team to people's workplaces next time. Greg pulled out his wallet. At least let me buy some fish. What do you recommend? Catfish is fresh today. Just came in this morning. He nodded. He didn't like fresh fish. The strong smell always made him nauseous, but he felt obligated to buy. I'll take 2. Jasmine wrapped up 2 beautiful catfish fillets in butcher paper. That'll be $15. Greg handed her a black credit card. Jasmine had never seen a black credit card in real life. She'd heard about them, the kind rich people had with unlimited credit. She looked at it, then at Greg, then back at the card. You know what? She said, handing it back. First-time customer special, it's on the house. He started protesting. I can't let you, I insist, Jasmine said firmly. You looked like you needed help. I helped. We're even. Something shifted in Greg's expression. He looked at her like he was really seeing her for the first time. Not just as the fish vendor who helped him hide, but as someone extraordinary. What's your name? He asked. Jasmine Carter. Well, Jasmine Carter, Greg said, taking the wrapped fish but leaving the black card on the counter anyway. You might have just saved my entire week. He turned to walk away, then stopped, turned back. Can I ask you something? Greg said. Sure. That scar. How long have you had it? About 3 years. Why? Greg was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face. And before that? What did you do before you started selling fish? Jasmine felt her chest tighten, her throat close up. Because that was the question, wasn't it? The question she couldn't answer, the question that haunted her every single day. She started, then stopped. Her voice came out colder than she intended. Defensive. I don't know. Greg's eyebrows went up. You don't know? I don't remember, Jasmine said flatly. 3 years ago, I woke up on the side of a road with this. She gestured to her scarred eye. And no memory of anything before that. So no, I don't know what I did before. I don't know where I came from. I don't even know if Jasmine Carter is my real name. All I know is I sell fish. That's it. The words came out harsher than she meant them to. But the question had touched something raw, something that hurt. Greg's whole face changed, softened. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's fine, Jasmine cut him off, turning back to her work. You should go before your mother's people come back. Jasmine, have a nice life, Greg Daniels. Greg stood there for another moment, clearly wanting to say something else. But Jasmine didn't turn around. Finally, she heard his footsteps walk away. She picked up the black card he'd left behind, feeling its weight, and tried to ignore the weird ache in her chest that felt like she'd just said goodbye to someone important. If you're already hooked on this story, if you want to know what that connection between them means, if you're wondering what Jasmine's life was like before that scar, hit that subscribe button right now. Ring that bell. Because what happens next, it's gonna blow your mind. After the market closed at 2 p.m., Jasmine found herself staring at that black credit card. She should throw it away. Should forget about Greg Daniels and his weird questions, and the way looking at him made her feel like she was remembering something just out of reach. But the Carter family was drowning in debt. Her adoptive father, Thomas, had a heart surgery last year that insurance barely covered. They were still paying off over $300,000 in medical bills. Her adoptive mother, Louise, was working double shifts at the diner even though her knees were getting worse. Her younger adoptive brother, DeAndre, had given up his college dreams to work at a warehouse. And here was this card, this unlimited credit card. Jasmine could use it, just once. Pay off the bills, change everything. But that would make her a thief, and the Carters didn't raise her to be a thief. No, she'd return the card, do the right thing. She looked at the address engraved on the card. Daniels Corporation, downtown, one of those fancy buildings she'd heard off but never entered. It was miles away from her village. How desperate had he been to escape his mother that he drove all the way here? What you thinking about so hard? Big Joe stopped by her stand, grinning. You got that look on your face like you're about to do something either real smart or real stupid. I haven't decided which one yet, Jasmine admitted. Big Joe laughed his deep, rumbling laugh. Baby girl, in my experience, the best stories come from the stupid decisions. His stupidly wise remark was all she needed to make up her mind. Jasmine found herself standing outside the Daniels Corporation building an hour later. It was one of those glass and steel towers that seemed to touch the clouds. Every person walking in and out looked like they belonged in a magazine. Perfect suits, designer bags, shoes that probably cost more than Jasmine made in a month. Jasmine looked down at her own outfit. Jean shorts with a few fish scales still stuck to them despite her best efforts to clean up. Her Carter's fish fry t-shirt. Her worn sneakers. And her scar. Always her scar. She saw people's eyes flick to it as they passed. Saw them quickly look away. Saw the pity or discomfort or curiosity. Jasmine was used to it. Didn't mean it didn't sting. You can do this, she told herself. Just return the card. Be professional. Leave. She walked through the revolving doors into the lobby. Everything was marble. polished wood, a massive fountain in the center. The ceiling was at least 30 feet high. Jasmine felt like she'd walked onto another planet. "Can I help you?" The receptionist, a woman with perfect makeup and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked Jasmine up and down like she was trying to figure out which janitorial service sent her. Her eyes lingered on Jasmine's scar for a beat too long. "Yeah, hi," Jasmine said, walking up to the desk with more confidence than she felt. "I'm here to return something to Greg Daniels. He left his credit card at my stand this morning." The receptionist's perfect eyebrows went up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he left his card, and I wanted to—" "Mr. Daniels doesn't see walk-ins," the receptionist interrupted smoothly. "You can leave the card with me, and I'll make sure he gets it." Something about the way she said it, like Jasmine wasn't worth Greg's time, made something in Jasmine's chest tighten. "Actually," Jasmine said, her voice cool and level, "he specifically left this card with delivery instructions. So I'm delivering it. To him. Personally." "I'm afraid that's not how— Is there a problem here?" A new voice cut in. A tall, slim man in an expensive suit appeared beside the reception desk. He had intelligent eyes and was looking at Jasmine with genuine curiosity. "Mr. Kenneth," the receptionist looked relieved. "This woman is trying to—" "I recognize her," Kenneth said, cutting her off. He turned to Jasmine with a slight smile. "You're the fish vendor from Westside Market, the one who helped Mr. Daniels this morning." Jasmine blinked. "How did you—" "Mr. Daniels called me from the market," Kenneth explained. "Asked me to look into the remarkable woman who helped him escape his mother's goon squad." He said it with such a straight face that Jasmine almost laughed. The receptionist's mouth fell open slightly. "He had you investigated?" Jasmine felt heat creep up her neck. "Standard procedure," Kenneth said smoothly. "But yes, Mr. Daniels is expecting you. Please, follow me." As they walked toward the elevator, Jasmine's mind raced. Greg had her investigated? What did he find? And why would he be expecting her? "I just came to return his card," Jasmine said. "I don't want any trouble." "Ms. Carter," Kenneth said as the elevator doors closed, "I've worked for Greg Daniels for 7 years. In that time, I've seen him interact with hundreds of people, politicians, celebrities, business moguls. I've never seen him look at someone the way he looked at you in that security footage from the market." "What are you talking about?" Kenneth smiled. "I'm talking about the fact that Greg Daniels is a very smart man who just found something very rare." "And what's that?" "Someone who wasn't impressed by his money, and someone who made him feel something he's been chasing for 3 years without knowing it." Before Jasmine could ask what that meant, the elevator doors opened directly into a massive office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city of Atlanta. And standing by those windows, hands in his pockets, was Greg Daniels. He'd changed clothes. Now he wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him so perfectly it had to be custom-made. His hair was freshly cut. He looked every inch the billionaire CEO. But when he turned and saw Jasmine, his whole face lit up with that same genuine smile from the market. And Jasmine felt it again. That pull, that sense of knowing him without understanding how. "Jasmine Carter," he said, like her name was something precious. "You actually came." "You left your card," Jasmine said, holding it up. Her voice came out softer than she intended. "Thought you might want it back." "I left it on purpose." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd return it," Greg said simply, walking closer. "Most people wouldn't." "Well, I'm not most people." "No," Greg agreed, his eyes never leaving hers, and notably, never once flicking to her scar like most people's did. He looked at her whole face like every part of it mattered equally. "You're definitely not." Kenneth cleared his throat. "I'll leave you two to talk. Mr. Daniels, your 4 o'clock called to reschedule." After Kenneth left, Jasmine and Greg stood in silence for a moment. "I'm sorry," Greg said finally, "for asking about your past at the market. I didn't know." "It's fine," Jasmine cut him off. "People ask. I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be used to it." Something in the way he said it, gentle, genuine, made Jasmine's defenses crack just a little. "Why did you look into me?" she asked. Greg walked to his desk, pulled out a folder. "Because everything about this morning felt strange, in a good way. You helped me without knowing who I was. You refused payment. You returned a card most people would have maxed out. And when I looked at you, I felt—" He stopped, shook his head. "This is going to sound crazy. Try me. I woke up 3 years ago not knowing my own name. Crazy is my normal." She thought the words, but didn't say it, just stared at him. "What is going to sound crazy?" she responded instead, her voice coming out a bit overeager. Greg met her eyes. "I felt like I knew you, like I'd been looking for you without realizing it." Jasmine's breath caught. She had felt it too. The admission hung in the air between them. "Which is why," Greg said slowly, opening the folder, "I need to ask you something that's going to sound absolutely insane." "More insane than arranged marriages in 2024? Greg smiled. "Much more insane than that." He took a deep breath. "Jasmine Carter, will you marry me?" Jasmine actually laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "Okay, you're joking. I'm completely serious." The laugh died in Jasmine's throat. You want me to marry you?" "Yes." "A man I met this morning?" "Yes." "For what? Love at first sight?" She meant it sarcastically, but Greg's expression made her heart skip. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Or maybe something deeper than that. But right now, I'm offering you a business arrangement. Marriage. 6 months. $500,000 a month." Jasmine felt dizzy. $500,000? Every month. Plus all your family's debt paid in full. "Why me?" Greg closed the folder. Inside, Jasmine caught glimpses of information. Photos of her at the market, information about the Carter family. "Because you're perfect," Greg said. "You're honest, hardworking, and you need money as badly as I need freedom from my mother's marriage schemes. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. A fake marriage. A real marriage on paper. Fake in practice, for 6 months. Then we divorce and you walk away with $5 million. Jasmine's head was spinning. This was insane. Completely insane. But then she thought about Mama Louise, taking extra shifts even though her knees swelled up every night. About Dad Thomas, who couldn't retire because they needed every penny. About DeAndre, who cried in his room when he thought no one could hear because he'd given up his dreams. "How long do I have to decide?" she heard herself ask. "Until 8 p.m. tonight," Greg said. "I need an answer by then. My mother is hosting a charity gala tomorrow night, and she's already invited 3 potential brides for me. If I show up married to you instead, she'll lose her mind." "Exactly." Jasmine walked to the window, looking out at Atlanta sprawled below. "Can I ask you something?" she said without turning around. "Anything." "When you look at me, do you see the scar first or the person?" She heard Greg move closer, felt him standing right behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth but not touching. "I see a woman who survived something horrific," Greg said quietly. "And I see someone who makes my heart beat faster for reasons I can't explain. The scar? It's part of your story, but it's not the whole story. And it's definitely not the first thing I see." Jasmine turned to face him. They were so close now. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Close enough to feel the pull between them. "What do you see first?" she whispered. "Home," Greg said. "I see home, and I don't understand why." Jasmine's hand moved on its own, reaching up to touch his face like it was the most natural thing in the world. The moment her fingers made contact with his skin, they both gasped. A flash, bright lights, a voice in her head saying, stay with me, hands covered in blood, a heartbeat monitor. "I'm here, I won't leave you." It was gone as fast as it came. Jasmine jerked back, shaking. "What was that?" Greg breathed, looking stunned as well. "I don't know." They stood there, both of them breathing hard, both of them feeling something neither could explain. Marry me, Greg said again. But this time, it didn't sound like a business proposal. It sounded like a plea. Even if it's fake, even if it's just for 6 months, marry me and maybe we can figure out why we feel like we've known each other forever. Jasmine stepped back, tried to think clearly. I need time, she said. You have until 8 p.m. tonight. Jasmine nodded and walked toward the elevator. But before she stepped inside, she turned back. Greg? Yeah? What's your favorite food? Greg blinked at the random question, then smiled. My grandmother's peach cobbler. Why? Just wanted to know one real thing about you, Jasmine said, before I decide if I'm going to marry you. As the elevator doors closed, Greg called out, What's yours? I don't know, Jasmine called back. I can't remember. And for some reason, they were both smiling. That night, Jasmine sat at the small kitchen table in the Carter family's modest apartment in East Atlanta. Mama Louise was at the stove making fried chicken, even though they could barely afford the ingredients. She always said that hard times were when you needed good food the most. Dad Thomas was reading the newspaper, his reading glasses sliding down his nose like they always did. DeAndre was at the other end of the table doing homework for the online class he was taking at night after his warehouse shifts. This was home. This was family. This was everything that mattered. But Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about the way Greg had looked at her, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. Baby girl, you've been quiet all evening, Mama Louise said, setting a plate in front of Jasmine. Something on your mind? Jasmine looked at the 3 people who'd found her 3 years ago, broken and lost on the side of a road. They had taken her to a hospital, paid her bills even though it cost them all their savings. And when she was unable to identify herself, they'd taken her in without question, named her Jasmine, loved her without hesitation, called her family without reservation, and now she had a chance to save them. Mama, Jasmine said slowly, what would you say if I told you I could pay off all our debt? Dad's medical bills, DeAndre's college fund, everything. The kitchen went quiet. Even the chicken stopped sizzling. Mama Louise's hands stilled on the serving spoon. Dad Thomas looked up from his paper. DeAndre stopped writing. Baby, Mama Louise said carefully, if you're thinking about taking out a loan or doing something dangerous. Not a loan, Jasmine interrupted. A job, sort of. What kind of job pays enough to clear $300,000 in debt? Dad Thomas asked, his voice cautious. Jasmine took a deep breath. The kind where I have to get married. Silence. Married? Mama Louise finally said. To who? A man I met today. His name is Greg Daniels. He's wealthy, very wealthy, and he needs a wife for business reasons. It would be temporary, 6 months, and he'd pay me enough to take care of everything. DeAndre spoke first. Sis, that sounds like a scam. Rich people don't just randomly ask people to marry them. It's not a scam, Jasmine insisted. I met him this morning at the market. He's real. His company is real. The money is real. But marriage, baby? Mama Louise sat down heavily. That's sacred. That's not something you play with, even for money. It's not a real marriage, Mama. It's just paperwork, a business arrangement. Marriage is marriage, Dad Thomas said quietly. Contract or not, you'd be legally bound to this man. That's not something to take lightly. I know it sounds crazy, Jasmine admitted. Trust me, I know. But think about what this could mean. Dad, you could retire. Your heart can't take 2 jobs much longer. Mama, you could quit that diner that's destroying your knees. DeAndre could go to college like he's always wanted. Like he deserves. And what about you? Mama Louise asked gently. What do you get out of this besides money? Jasmine was quiet for a moment. Then quietly, maybe answers. Answers? Dad Thomas frowned. When I look at him, Jasmine touched her scarred eye unconsciously. I feel something, like I know him, like I've known him before. And I thought, maybe if I'm around him, maybe I'll remember something. Anything about who I was before. Mama Louise's eyes filled with tears. Oh, baby girl. Jasmine's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi, it's Greg. Have you made your decision? No pressure. Okay, maybe a little pressure. My mother just called me 17 times. Despite everything, Jasmine smiled. I need to give him an answer tonight, Jasmine said. Dad Thomas folded his newspaper carefully. Then here's my answer, and you listen good, Jasmine. We didn't take you in and love you like our own daughter just to watch you sell yourself for money, no matter how desperate things get. We'll figure out the debt. We always do. But Dad, let me finish, he said, holding up a hand. But we also can't make your decisions for you. You're a grown woman. If you think this man is someone you can trust, if you think this might help you find out who you were, then we'll support you. But you need to be sure. You need to know exactly what you're getting into. Jasmine looked at her phone, at the message from Greg Daniels, at the man who could solve all their problems with the stroke of a pen. She thought about the way he'd looked at her. Not at her scar, not with pity, but with something that felt like recognition, like coming home. She picked up her phone and typed, I have some conditions. Greg's response came immediately. Name them. 1. We tell my family the truth. They deserve to know it's not real. Agreed. 2. Separate bedrooms. I'm doing this for the money, not for anything else. Agreed. I have very comfortable guest rooms. 3. If at any point I want out, I can leave. No questions asked. There was a longer pause this time. Then, agreed. But I hope you won't want to. Jasmine's heart skipped. She typed, 4. You have to answer one question honestly, right now. Shoot. When you looked at me today, did you feel like you knew me? Like we'd met before? The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Yes, and it's been driving me crazy all day. I don't know what that means, but I want to find out. With you. Jasmine read the message 3 times. Then she typed, Okay, I'll marry you. Awesome. Meet me at the courthouse tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Kenneth will send a car. I can take the bus. You're going to be my wife. Even as a fake one, you're not taking the bus to our wedding. She typed back without a second hesitation. Especially a fake one. I'm taking the bus. You're stubborn. You have no idea. Good. I like stubborn. See you tomorrow, future Mrs. Daniels. Jasmine stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she looked up at her family, her adopted family, the people who had loved her for 3 years. I'm doing it, she said. Mama Louise reached across the table and took both of Jasmine's hands. Then we're with you, baby girl. Every step of the way. Even if it's crazy? Especially if it's crazy, DeAndre said with a grin. This is the most interesting thing that's happened to this family in years. Dad Thomas just smiled. Just promise me one thing, Jasmine. What's that? This still sounds too good to be true. Promise me that if you have a second doubt, you won't wait. Pull out immediately. I promise, Dad. That night, Jasmine lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow morning, she'd marry a man she barely knew. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into a world she'd only seen on TV. And somewhere deep in her mind, in the place where her memories used to be, something was stirring. That flash when she'd touched Greg's face, the feeling of knowing him. What did it mean? The Fulton County Courthouse was nothing like any wedding Jasmine had imagined. No flowers, no music, no happy guests throwing rice. Just fluorescent lights, squeaky floors, and the smell of industrial cleaner. But when Jasmine walked through the doors and saw Greg standing there in a perfectly tailored navy suit, her heart jumped in a way that had nothing to do with business arrangements. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the smile that broke across his face was so genuine, so warm, that Jasmine had to remind herself this was fake. You came, Greg said, and Jasmine could hear the relief in his voice. I said I would. You could have changed your mind. I don't go back on my word. Jasmine walked closer. She'd worn a simple white sundress, not because it was a wedding, but because it was the nicest thing she owned. That's not who I am? No, Greg said softly, his eyes taking in every detail of her face. The scar, the single eye, the determined set of her jaw. It's definitely not. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. You know this is crazy, right? Jasmine said. Completely insane, Greg agreed. We just met yesterday. 24 hours ago, I was hiding behind your fish stand. And now we're getting married. Fake married, Greg corrected. Then quieter. Unless what? Greg shook his head. Nothing. Let's just see where this goes. Kenneth appeared with the paperwork. Everything's ready. The judge is waiting. The ceremony took exactly 8 minutes. A tired judge read from a script she'd probably read 1,000 times. Greg slipped a simple platinum band on Jasmine's finger. Not flashy, but beautiful. Classic. I didn't have time to get you a ring, Jasmine said, embarrassed. Doesn't matter, Greg said. And the way he looked at her made her think he actually meant it. By the power vested in me by the state of Georgia, the judge intoned, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Jasmine and Greg looked at each other. We don't have to, Jasmine started. But Greg was already leaning in. For practice, in case my mother gets suspicious. His lips brushed hers, soft, gentle, tentative, and the world exploded. Jasmine gasped against his mouth. Another flash in her head, stronger this time. A hospital room. A younger Greg, unconscious, barely breathing. Her hands. No, someone else's hands on his abdomen making an incision. Someone else's voice saying, I'm here, don't be scared. I'll be with you. Greg pulled back, breathing hard, watching her wide eyes. Are you okay? I think I saw. Before she could finish, Kenneth cleared his throat awkwardly. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Daniels. The car is waiting. As they walked out of the courthouse into the bright Atlanta sunshine, Jasmine looked down at the ring on her finger. So, she said, trying to lighten the mood, I'm officially a married woman now. Officially my wife, Greg corrected. He took her hand, the one with the ring, and threaded his fingers through hers. How does it feel? Weird, scary, like I jumped off a cliff. Well, Mrs. Daniels, Greg said with that smile that made her stomach flip. Lucky for you, I'm very good at catching people. And despite herself, despite the fake marriage and the business arrangement and all the logical reasons this was a terrible idea, Jasmine smiled back. We'll see about that, Mr. Daniels. What do you think Jasmine is remembering? How do you think they know each other? Drop your theories in the comments right now, and if you're not subscribed, if you're not following this channel, you're missing out. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, share this with your romance-loving friends, because tonight at the gala, everything changes. Let's go. So about tonight, Greg said as they sat in his car heading back to his penthouse. The gala. Right, the gala where I meet your family and pretend to be your loving wife. Exactly. Greg pulled up to a red light and turned to look at her. My mother will be there, my grandfather, my cousin Brandon, who would love nothing more than to see me fail so he can take over the company. They're all going to be watching us like hawks, looking for cracks, looking for any proof that our marriage isn't real. Jasmine thought about this. So what do we do? Greg reached over and took her hand. The touch sent electricity up her arm. We show them what they want to see, a couple who can't keep their hands off each other. I'm not good at acting. Then don't act, Greg said. Just follow my lead. And Jasmine? Yeah? When I touch you tonight, when I put my arm around you or hold your hand or pull you close, it's for them, for the show. It doesn't mean anything, okay? But the way he said it, looking at her like she was the only person in the world, made Jasmine think he was trying to convince himself as much as her. Okay, she whispered, just for show. Just for show, Greg repeated. Neither of them believed it. When Kenneth showed up at the Carter apartment at exactly 5 p.m., he brought an entire team with him. Stylists, makeup artists, what looked like a mobile boutique worth of dresses. Mr. Daniels wanted to make sure you had options. Kenneth explained as the team transformed the Carters' small living room into a fashion show. Mama Louise watched with wide eyes. Lord have mercy, baby girl. What have you gotten into? I'm still trying to figure that out, Mama. 2 hours later, Jasmine stood in front of a full-length mirror and barely recognized herself. The dress was deep emerald green, simple but elegant, hugging her curves before flowing to the floor in soft waves. Her natural hair had been styled into an elegant updo with soft curls framing her face, including the scarred side. The makeup artist had asked if she wanted to minimize the scar, and Jasmine had said no. If Greg could look at it and see survival instead of damage, maybe she could too. Wow, sis, DeAndre breathed. You look like someone who doesn't belong in this dress, Jasmine finished. Like someone who could own every room she walks into, Mama Louise corrected, her eyes shining with tears. Like a queen, baby girl. Kenneth smiled. Mrs. Daniels, are you ready? Mrs. Daniels. That was her now. Ready as I'll ever be, Jasmine said. The ride to the gala was a blur. Kenneth briefed her on names, faces, what to say, what not to say. But Jasmine barely heard him. Her mind was racing. What if she messed up? What if Greg's family hated her? What if everyone saw through their fake marriage immediately? What if that kiss in the courthouse meant something she wasn't ready for? We're here, Kenneth announced. The car pulled up to the Grand Hyatt Buckhead. A literal red carpet led from the curb to the entrance. Photographers lined both sides. Wait, Jasmine said, panic rising. Why are there photographers? Because Greg Daniels' surprise marriage is the biggest society news Atlanta has seen in years, Kenneth said calmly. Ready? No, absolutely not. But Jasmine nodded anyway. The car door opened. Kenneth offered his hand. Jasmine took a deep breath, remembered Mama Louise's words. Hold your head high, baby. We're Carters, and Carters don't bow to nobody, and stepped out. Camera flashes exploded. Who are you? How did you meet Greg Daniels? Is it true you got married this morning? What happened to your eye? That last question hit like a slap. Jasmine's hand flew to her scar instinctively. And then he was there. Greg, looking devastating in a black tuxedo, moving through the crowd of reporters like they weren't even there. He reached Jasmine, and without a word, he gently moved her hand away from her scar. Don't hide, he said quietly, just for her. You're beautiful. All of you. Then he turned to the reporters, his arm sliding possessively around Jasmine's waist. Gentlemen, ladies, this is my wife, Jasmine, and that's all the comment you're getting tonight. We have a party to attend. He led her up the red carpet, his hand warm and steady on her waist, shielding her from the cameras and the questions and the stares. Thank you, Jasmine whispered. Always, Greg said. And the way he said it made it sound like a promise. At the top of the steps, before they walked inside, Greg stopped and turned to face her. You okay? He asked. Nervous. Me too. You? You do this all the time. Not with you, Greg said. Not with someone who makes me feel like... He trailed off, shaking his head. Like what? Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Before Jasmine could respond, the doors opened. Music spilled out. Light. Laughter. Ready to meet the family? Greg asked, offering his arm. Jasmine took it. Let's get this over with. They walked into the ballroom together. Every head turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Jasmine walked into that ballroom holding Greg's arm, and the first thing she saw was a woman in a red dress staring at her like she'd seen a ghost. The woman's wine glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the marble floor. Red wine spread across the white stone like blood. But Jasmine barely noticed the mess. Because the moment she locked eyes with that woman, pain exploded in her head. Sharp, brutal, blinding. Her vision blurred, and she felt like she was thrown backwards in time. A scene, or was it a memory flashed in her head? A woman's face hovering over her, dark eyes. A smile that didn't reach those eyes, welding a knife. You're from the fish village, honey. Far away from here. You sell fish? That's all you need to remember. The image disappeared before she could make sense of it, making Jasmine's head spin with the speed of it. Jasmine gasped, grabbing Greg's arm tighter. Jasmine! Greg's voice was full of concern. What's wrong? Are you okay? But Jasmine couldn't answer, because she was staring at that woman in red. And somewhere deep in her mind, a voice was screaming, "Run! Danger! She can hurt you! Run!" Jasmine, hey, talk to me! Greg turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. What is it? That woman, Jasmine whispered, still staring. The one in red, who is she? Greg followed her gaze. That's Dr. Jane Williams. She's engaged to my cousin Brandon. Why? Dr. Jane Williams. Why did that name make Jasmine want to cry, want to scream, want to run as fast as she could? I don't know, Jasmine said quietly. But something about her… Greg, I think I know her. From before. Greg's whole body tensed. From before the amnesia? I don't know. Maybe. Another stab of pain. Every time I look at her, my head hurts, like my brain is trying to remember something and can't. Across the room, Jane was staring at Jasmine with an expression that was half terror, half confusion. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Come on, Greg said, his arm sliding protectively around Jasmine's waist. Let's get you some air. There you are. A woman's voice cut through the ballroom like a knife. A tall, elegant black woman in her 60s was bearing down on them, wearing a silver gown and an expression that could freeze water. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, and currently fixed on Jasmine like a hawk spotting prey. Mom, Greg said, his voice carefully neutral. Right on time. Don't you mom me, Gregory Daniels. The woman stopped right in front of them, her eyes raking over Jasmine from head to toe. You got married this morning without telling me, without inviting me, without even asking my permission? I'm 31 years old, Mother. I don't need your permission. You most certainly do when it affects this family's reputation. Patricia Daniels' eyes narrowed. And who exactly is this? This is Jasmine, Greg said, pulling Jasmine closer. My wife. Your wife, Patricia repeated slowly. She looked at Jasmine again, and this time her gaze lingered on the scar. And where did you meet this wife? The guard said you likely met her only yesterday, and don't you dare lie to me. Jasmine felt Greg tense beside her, ready to defend her, but she spoke first. At the fish market, Jasmine said, her voice clear and steady. I sell fish. Patricia's mouth fell open. You sell fish? Yes, ma'am. Best catfish you've ever tasted. She married my son for his money, Patricia said flatly. Actually, Jasmine said, your son married me for his freedom, so I guess we're both getting what we want. Somewhere behind them, someone choked on their drink. Greg was trying very hard not to laugh. Mom, this is neither the time nor the place. Oh, this is exactly the time and place, Patricia's voice rose. Gregory, I have spent years trying to find you a suitable wife from a good family, and you go and marry a fish seller you met yesterday? 2 days ago, technically, Greg said. And yes, because she's honest, she's brave, and she doesn't give a damn about my money or my last name. Which is more than I can say for any of the women you've been throwing at me. Patricia looked like she was about to have a stroke, but before she could respond, an older black man with gray hair and kind eyes appeared beside her, placing a calming hand on her arm. Patricia, calm down. You're making a scene. He turned to Jasmine with a warm smile. Hello, young lady. I'm Malcolm Daniels, Greg's grandfather, and despite my daughter's appalling manners, I'd like to welcome you to the family. Jasmine felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Thank you, sir. That's very kind. Call me Malcolm. He studied her face carefully, and unlike his daughter, his eyes didn't linger on the scar with pity or disgust, just curiosity. That's quite a mark you have there. If you don't mind me asking, how did you get it? Grandpa, Greg warned. It's okay, Jasmine said, She touched her scar self-consciously. Car accident, 3 years ago. I don't remember much about it. I woke up in a hospital with no memory in this. Something shifted in Malcolm's expression. 3 years ago? Yes, sir. Malcolm looked at Greg with an odd expression. 3 years? Grandpa, not now, Greg said quietly, eyes darting away. But Jasmine caught the look, the significance. 3 years ago meant something to them. Before she could ask what, another voice joined the conversation. Well, well, well. Cousin Greg actually got married. I didn't think I'd see the day. A tall, light-skinned man with a smug smile approached them. He had Greg's build, but none of his warmth. This had to be Brandon. And on his arm, wearing that red dress and a frozen smile, was Jane Williams. Jasmine's head exploded with pain again, but she held herself together so no one would notice. The last thing she needed right now was to appear sick or weak. Brandon, Greg said coolly. Jane, how nice of you to come over and congratulate us. Congratulate? Brandon laughed. I'm here to meet the woman who finally made you break your 3-year streak of turning down every eligible woman in Atlanta. She must be something special. She is, Greg said simply, looking at Jasmine like she'd hung the moon. Jane was staring at Jasmine, really staring, like she was trying to see through a disguise. Do I know you? Jane asked suddenly, her voice tight. Jasmine met her eyes. I don't think so. I sell fish at Westside Market. You ever shop there? No, Jane said slowly. I don't go to markets, but you look familiar. I get that a lot, Jasmine said, even though she didn't. Maybe I just have one of those faces. Maybe, Jane said, but she didn't sound convinced. Brandon was looking between them with interest. Jane, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Jane said quickly. Too quickly. Just surprised by the sudden wedding, that's all. Well, you're not the only one, Patricia huffed. Gregory, I want to speak with you, privately, now. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my wife, Greg said firmly. Fine. Patricia turned to Jasmine. Did you sign a prenuptial agreement? Mother! Greg's voice was sharp. It's okay, Jasmine said. She looked Patricia straight in the eye. No, ma'am, I didn't. Your son didn't ask me to. But if it makes you feel better, I'm not after his money. The words hurt to say more than Jasmine expected because she was basically lying, wasn't she? She was after the pay Greg would give her to help her family. Did that equate to being after his money? This is bad for the family reputation, Patricia snapped. With all due respect, Mrs. Daniels, Jasmine said, her voice quiet but firm. Your son's happiness should be a bigger priority than family reputation. The ballroom went quiet. People were watching. Malcolm was smiling. I like her. Patricia looked furious. You like everyone. No, Malcolm said. I like people with backbone, and this girl has plenty of it. He turned to Jasmine. Young lady, I want you to know something. My son-in-law, Greg's father, was a good man, but he married for love, not money. Married a girl from rural Georgia that everyone said wasn't good enough. Patricia here. He smiled at his daughter. And look how that turned out. So don't let anyone tell you you're not worthy of this family, you hear me? Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, sir, thank you. Now, Malcolm said, clapping his hands together, I believe there's supposed to be dancing at this gala. Greg, dance with your wife. Show everyone what a beautiful couple you make. Greg looked at Jasmine. May I have this dance, Mrs. Daniels? Jasmine took his hand. You may, Mr. Daniels. Greg led Jasmine onto the dance floor. A slow song was playing, something classic and romantic that Jasmine didn't recognize but felt in her bones. I'm sorry about my mother, Greg said quietly as he pulled Jasmine into his arms, one hand on her waist, the other holding her hand. She's intense. She hates me, Jasmine said. She doesn't hate you. She hates that she can't control me. Greg pulled her closer. And your grandfather likes you. That's what matters. Does it? Jasmine looked up at him. They were so close now. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Close enough to feel his heartbeat. Matter, I mean, since this is all fake anyway? Greg was quiet for a moment. They swayed to the music, moving together like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Jasmine, he said finally, can I ask you something? Sure. Does this feel fake to you? Jasmine's breath caught. No? Good, Greg said softly. Because it doesn't feel fake to me either, and I'm trying to figure out why. They kept dancing. Jasmine rested her head against Greg's chest, listening to his heartbeat. It felt so natural, so right, like coming home. Greg, Jasmine said after a moment. Yeah? When you said you've been turning down women for 3 years? Why 3 years? What happened 3 years ago? Greg's body tensed slightly. His hand tightened on her waist. I met someone, he said quietly. 7 years ago. I was in a car accident, bad one. I was bleeding out, barely conscious, and this doctor, this incredible doctor, she saved my life. Performed emergency surgery right there in the ambulance. Kept talking to me the whole time, telling me to stay with her, telling me I'd be okay. Jasmine's heart was pounding. What happened to her? I woke up in the hospital 2 days later, asked about her, but she'd already moved on to another emergency. And when I finally tracked her down, Greg smiled, but it was sad. She was the most brilliant, beautiful, stubborn woman I'd ever met. A surgical resident. Genius-level IQ. And she wanted nothing to do with me. Why not? Because she said I was only interested in her because she saved my life, that I was confusing gratitude with attraction. Greg laughed softly. She was wrong, but she made me work for it. Made me prove I actually cared about who she was, not what she'd done for me. Did you? Jasmine whispered. Prove it. Eventually. Took me 6 months of showing up at her hospital with coffee, pretending to need medical advice, accidentally running into her at her favorite bookstore. Greg's voice was warm with the memory. But she finally agreed to one date, then another, and before I knew it, I was completely in love with her. Jasmine's chest felt tight. What was her name? Greg was quiet for so long that Jasmine thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, Daphne. Her name was Daphne Hampton. The name hit Jasmine like a physical blow. Her head exploded with pain. She gasped, stumbling slightly. Greg caught her immediately. Jasmine, what's wrong? Another white flash in her head. Another vision, or was it a memory? A younger Greg, lying in a hospital bed, awake this time, smiling at her. You're beautiful, you know that? He said with a charming wink. You're concussed. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Dr. Hampton. It's Daphne, and you need to rest. Only if you promise to be here when I wake up? A smile. Her smile. I promise. Jasmine jerked back to present. Dr. Hampton, she whispered, her hand flying to her scarred eye as pain lanced through her skull. Daphne Hampton. Greg froze. What did you just say? I don't know why I said that. Jasmine looked up at him, her single eye wide and confused. Greg, what happened to her? To Daphne? Greg's face had gone pale. There was a car accident 3 years ago. She and her parents were driving back from a medical conference. Something happened. The brakes failed. They crashed. Her parents were gone instantly. And Daphne, his voice broke. She was thrown from the car. They never found her body. The police said she went into the river. They searched for weeks, but they declared her dead. Jasmine finished quietly. Yes. Greg's hands were shaking where they held her. How did you know that? I didn't. It made sense. Jasmine's mind was racing. Greg, when did this happen? Exactly? 3 years ago, August 15th. Jasmine's blood ran cold. That's the day I woke up in the hospital, August 15th, 3 years ago. Greg's eyes went wide. What? The doctor said someone found me on the side of a road near the Chattahoochee River. I had a massive head injury. No ID, no memory, just... She touched her scar. This. Greg was staring at her like he'd seen a ghost. They stood there in the middle of the dance floor, both of them realizing the impossible. Greg, Jasmine whispered. What did Daphne look like? Greg's hands came up to cup her face. His fingers were gentle as they traced the scar over her left eye. She had the most beautiful brown eyes, he said softly. Both of them. A smile that could light up a room. She was about 5'6", brilliant mind, skilled hands, and she had a small birthmark right here. His finger traced a spot on Jasmine's left shoulder. Jasmine's breath caught. She had a birthmark there. Exactly there. Greg, I need to ask you something, Greg interrupted, his voice urgent. And I need you to tell me the truth. Have you ever had flashes, memories, anything from before the accident? Yes, Jasmine admitted, especially since I met you, when we kissed at the courthouse, when we touched. I see things, feel things, like I've known you before. What do you see? A hospital. You, younger, in a bed. Someone, me, but not me, I don't know, holding your hand. Jasmine's voice shook. Greg, am I going crazy? No, Greg said firmly. You're remembering. Remembering what? Us. I knew it. This feeling in my gut. Jasmine, no, you're not Jasmine, you... Before Jasmine could respond, a commotion erupted across the ballroom. Someone was screaming. Help, someone help, he's not breathing. Greg and Jasmine broke apart, turning toward the sound. Malcolm Daniels was on the ground. Patricia was kneeling beside him, screaming. People were crowding around, panicking. Someone call 911, Patricia shrieked. He's choking, someone yelled. Do we have a medical practitioner here? Jane Williams pushed through the crowd, her face pale but determined. I'm a doctor. Everyone move back. She dropped to her knees beside Malcolm and immediately positioned herself behind him, wrapping her arms around his torso to perform the Heimlich maneuver on his unconscious body. No, Jasmine's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Stop. You're doing it wrong. Everyone froze. Jane looked up, her eyes wild. Excuse me? I'm a trained surgeon. He's unconscious. Jasmine was already pushing through the crowd, moving on pure instinct. You can't do the Heimlich on an unconscious patient. You'll fracture his ribs and puncture a lung. I know what I'm doing, Jane snapped, but her hands were shaking. She looked terrified. Jasmine shoved Jane aside, not gently, and dropped to her knees beside Malcolm. Her hands immediately went to his neck, checking for a pulse. Weak pulse, she said, her voice suddenly calm and professional. Cardiac event combined with airway obstruction. He's going into arrest. How do you know that? Patricia demanded through her tears. You sell fish. But Jasmine wasn't listening. Her hands were already moving with practiced precision. Loosening Malcolm's tie, tilting his head back, checking his airway. He's got a complete obstruction, Jasmine said. Food lodged in the trachea. With him unconscious, abdominal thrusts are contraindicated. You risk aspiration and organ damage. Jane was staring at her with an expression of pure horror. Because those were the exact medical terms, the exact reasoning, the way Daphne used to talk. Then what do we do? Brandon shouted. He's dying. I need to perform an emergency cricothyrotomy, Jasmine said, her hands already assessing Malcolm's throat, finding the landmarks by touch alone. You're going to cut into his throat? Patricia screamed. If I don't, he'll be brain dead in 2 minutes, Jasmine said flatly. Someone give me a hollow pen, now. You can't, Jane started, scrambling to her feet. You're not qualified. You'll end him. Jasmine's head snapped up. Her single eye locked onto Jane with an intensity that made the other woman step back. Sit down. Jasmine's voice was ice cold. You almost collapsed his lung with that Heimlich attempt. You want to help? Get out of my way. Greg was already there, pressing a pen into Jasmine's hand. Do it. Greg, if she's wrong, Patricia sobbed. She's not wrong, Greg said firmly, his eyes never leaving Jasmine's face. I trust her. Save him. Jasmine took the pen apart with practiced efficiency. Found the cricothyroid membrane by touch, just below the Adam's apple, between the thyroid and cricoid cartilage. Jane watched, frozen, as Jasmine made a small, precise horizontal incision. The technique was perfect, the angle exact, the depth controlled. This wasn't someone guessing. This was someone who'd done this before. Malcolm gasped. Air rushed into his lungs through the makeshift airway. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Jasmine held pressure, maintaining the airway. Someone call an ambulance. Tell them we have a 72-year-old male, cardiac event with foreign body airway obstruction. I've performed an emergency cricothyrotomy. He's breathing, but needs immediate transport and surgical airway management. Her voice was steady, professional, using medical terminology that no fish vendor should know. How did you... Patricia started. Now! Jasmine barked, and 3 people jumped to pull out their phones. Patricia was staring at her, eyes wide. Jasmine, where did you learn to do that? I don't know, Jasmine whispered, looking at her blood-covered hands. They were completely steady. Not a tremor, like they'd performed this procedure 100 times. I just knew. Jane was backing away slowly, her face ashen, her hands trembling, because she'd just watched a dead woman perform emergency surgery. And she knew that Daphne Hampton had just come back from the grave. You, Jasmine said, still kneeling beside Malcolm, still holding pressure on his airway. Dr. Williams, you're a surgeon, right? Jane nodded mutely. Then why didn't you know that the Heimlich is contraindicated for unconscious patients? Jasmine's voice was quiet but sharp. That's first-year medical school material. Jane opened her mouth, closed it. No sound came out. She practically ran from the ballroom. But the paramedics burst before Jasmine could say something else, and the chaos of saving Malcolm's life took over. But across the ballroom, hiding in the shadows near the exit, Jane Williams watched with murder in her eyes. Because Daphne Hampton was supposed to be dead, or at the very least, a brain-damaged vegetable. And if she remembered everything, if she remembered what Jane had done, then Jane's entire life would crumble to dust. The hospital waiting room was silent except for the tick of the clock on the wall. Greg sat with his head in his hands. Patricia was pacing, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Brandon was on his phone. And Jane was sitting perfectly still, staring at Jasmine like a snake watching a mouse. Jasmine couldn't stop looking at her hands. They'd been washed clean, but she could still see Malcolm's blood on them, could still feel the way her fingers had moved with absolute confidence. No hesitation, no doubt, like she'd done it before, like she'd been trained. Jasmine, Greg said quietly, taking her hand. You saved his life. I know, Jasmine whispered. But Greg, I don't understand how. I'm a fish vendor. How did I know how to do that? Because you're not just a fish vendor, Greg said. His eyes were intense, searching her face. Jasmine, I think you might be the family of Malcolm Daniels. A doctor appeared in the doorway. Everyone jumped to their feet. I'm his daughter, Patricia said, rushing forward. How is he? He's stable, the doctor said with a smile. Whoever performed that emergency cricothyrotomy saved his life. If he'd gone another 2 minutes without oxygen, we'd be having a very different conversation. The doctor looked around the room. Which one of you is the EMT? I'm not an EMT, Jasmine said quietly. I just helped. The doctor's eyebrows went up. You just helped? Ma'am, what you did requires years of medical training. Where did you study? I didn't, Jasmine said. I sell fish. You sell fish, the doctor repeated slowly. He looked at Greg. Is she joking? It's complicated, Greg said. Well, complicated or not, you have a remarkable wife, Mr. Daniels. Malcolm is asking for her, by the way. He wants to thank the woman who saved him. Malcolm looked small in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs. But his eyes were bright and alert when Jasmine walked in. There's my savior, he said, his voice raspy from the tube they'd had down his throat. Come here, child. Jasmine approached the bed slowly. Greg stayed by the door, giving them space. "I'm so glad you're okay," Jasmine said. "Thanks to you." Malcolm reached out and took her hand. "That was some quick thinking. Where did you learn to do that?" "I don't know," Jasmine admitted. My hands knew what to do." Malcolm studied her face carefully. "You really don't remember anything from before 3 years ago?" "No, sir." Malcolm was quiet for a moment. Then, "Daphne was declared dead 3 years ago. Same day you woke up with no memory." Jasmine's heart skipped. "Yes, sir." "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you know your blood type?" The question surprised her. "AB negative. The hospital told me when I woke up. Said it was rare." Malcolm's eyes widened. Daphne was AB negative. Less than 1% of the population has that blood type. That doesn't mean... And the surgical technique you used, Malcolm continued. "I may be old, but I'm not blind. That was advanced. Professional. The kind of thing that takes years to learn. Daphne was a surgical resident, one of the best." Jasmine's hands were shaking. "Mr. Daniels, call me Malcolm, and I'm not saying this to upset you, child. I'm saying this because I think you deserve to know the truth." He squeezed her hand. "I think you might be Daphne Hampton. I think my grandson's dead girlfriend is standing right in front of me." The words hung in the air. "But Greg didn't recognize me," Jasmine whispered. "If I was her, if I was the woman he loved, wouldn't he have known the moment he saw me?" "Maybe," Malcolm said gently. "Or maybe the scar changed your face enough that his brain couldn't make the connection. Maybe he's been looking for a dead woman for so long that he can't see the living one right in front of him. Or maybe," Malcolm smiled sadly, "maybe he has recognized you, deep down, in his heart. Why else would he feel such a connection to you? Why else would he marry a stranger he just met?" Jasmine looked over at Greg. From the distance, she was sure he couldn't hear them. He was watching them from the doorway with an expression she couldn't read, but she could see the haziness in his eyes, a faraway look that spoke of someone in a mix of disbelief, shock, and wonder. "I need to know," Jasmine said, her voice shaking. "I need to know if I'm her, if I'm Daphne." "Then we'll find out," Malcolm said firmly. "We'll run tests, DNA if we have to. We'll get you answers, child, I promise." The hospital waiting room was filled with tense silence when Daphne and Greg exited Malcolm's room. Patricia Daniels sat in a chair, her usually perfect posture slumped. Her hands shaking slightly as she held a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. "Mrs. Daniels," Daphne started gently. "Malcolm is going to be okay. The doctors said—" "I know what the doctors said," Patricia interrupted. But her voice wasn't sharp. It was tired, defeated. "They also said that if you hadn't intervened when you did, my father would be dead right now." Daphne didn't know what to say to that. Patricia finally looked up, meeting Daphne's eye. Really looking at her. Not at the scar, not with judgment, but with something that looked almost like respect. "You saved his life," Patricia said quietly. "With medical training you claim not to have. Using techniques that take years to master. You did it without hesitation, without fear. Like you'd done it 1,000 times before. And Dr. P. Williams, a trained surgeon, was about to make it worse," Patricia continued. "You stopped her. You knew exactly what was wrong and exactly how to fix it." Greg reached over and took Daphne's hand. Patricia noticed the gesture, noticed the way her son looked at this woman, like she was the only person in the world. "I owe you an apology," Patricia said, the words clearly difficult for her. "I judged you the moment I saw you. I saw a fish vendor with a scar and assumed you were after my son's money. I didn't see you." "Mrs. Daniels, let me finish." Patricia held up a hand. "My son looks at you the way his father used to look at me. Before the money, before the company. When we were just two kids from rural Georgia who didn't have anything except each other." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'd forgotten what that looked like. Real love, not the calculated marriages I've been trying to arrange for him." Daphne felt tears prick her eye. I don't know who you are, Patricia continued, and I don't know your story, but you saved my father, and my son loves you, so thank you. For both. You're welcome, Daphne said softly. Later that night, Greg drove Jasmine back to his penthouse in silence. Guest room is down that hall, Greg said quietly, pointing. Master bedroom is the other way. Bathroom, kitchen, everything is open to you. Make yourself at home. Greg, Jasmine said, catching his arm as he turned to leave. We need to talk about this. About what? About the possibility that I might be Daphne Hampton. About what that would mean. Greg's jaw clenched. What do you want me to say? Jasmine? I want you to tell me the truth. Jasmine's voice broke. Did you know? When you saw me at the market, did some part of you recognize me? I don't know. Greg ran his hands over his face. I don't know, okay? When I looked at you, I felt something. Like I knew you. Like you mattered. But Daphne is dead. She's been dead for 3 years. I mourned her. I buried an empty coffin because there was no body to bury. I spent 3 years trying to move on from the love of my life. So no, when I saw a one-eyed fish vendor at Westside Market, I did not think, oh, that's my dead girlfriend. The words were harsh, but Jasmine could hear the pain underneath them. But now, she pressed, now that you know the timeline matches, now that you've seen me perform surgery? Greg looked at her, really looked at her. Now I don't know what to think, because if you are Daphne, then that means I spent 3 years looking for you when you were alive the whole time. It means you were out there, lost and alone and not remembering me, and I didn't find you. It means I failed you. Greg, and if you're not Daphne, Greg continued, his voice rough, then that means I'm falling for someone who just happens to remind me of her. Which makes me the worst kind of person. Because you deserve someone who wants you. Not someone who wants you because you might be someone else. Jasmine stepped closer to him. Close enough to touch. And what if I am her? What if I'm Daphne? Greg's eyes met hers. Then I want to know why you left. Why you didn't come find me. Why you let me think you were dead. I didn't remember. Jasmine's voice rose. I didn't remember you. Or my life or anything. I woke up and someone told me I was a fish seller from a fish village, and that's all I knew. Who told you that? Greg asked sharply. Who found you? I don't know. I never saw their face clearly. Just a voice. A woman's voice, I think. Jasmine closed her eyes, trying to remember. She said, I was from the fish village. That I sold fish. And then she left me near a bus stop and disappeared. Greg's whole body went rigid. A woman? What did she sound like? I don't know. Everything was fuzzy. I'd just hit my head again, I think. I was confused, in pain. She could have told me I was an astronaut and I would have believed her. Jasmine. Greg grabbed her shoulders gently. This is important. Did you recognize the voice? Would you know it if you heard it again? Maybe. I don't. Jasmine stopped, looked up at him. Why? Do you think someone did this to me on purpose? That it wasn't an accident? I think, Greg said carefully, that the brakes on Daphne's car were cut. The police investigated it as a potential homicide. They just never found who did it. The world tilted. Someone tried to end me? Jasmine whispered. Maybe. If you're Daphne, which we still don't know for sure. Then we need to find out, Jasmine said firmly. Tomorrow, first thing, whatever tests we need to run, whatever we need to do, I need to know who I am. Greg nodded. Tomorrow, I'll have Kenneth arrange everything. He started to walk away, then stopped, turned back. Jasmine? Yeah? Whether you're Daphne or not, I'm glad I found you, whoever you are. What do you think is about to happen? Comment below. And if you're loving this story, if you're invested in Greg and Jasmine, share this with your friends. Hit that subscribe button because the next part is where we get answers. And trust me, those answers are going to blow your mind. Jasmine couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest room, which was bigger than the Carters' entire living room, staring at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes. Memories that weren't quite memories. A medical school lecture hall. Hands in surgical gloves. Greg, younger, laughing at something she said. A woman's face, dark eyes, a smile that didn't match those eyes. Friends don't ruin friends' careers, Daphne. Jasmine sat up, gasping. Jane. Dr. Jane Williams. The woman in the red dress who'd looked at her like she'd seen a ghost. Jasmine grabbed her phone. Did a quick Google search. Dr. Jane Williams, surgeon, Atlanta. Pages of results came up. Articles, photos, and then one article from 4 years ago. Medical board investigates near-fatal surgical error. Jasmine clicked on it, her heart pounding. Dr. Jane Williams, a surgical resident at Piedmont Hospital, is under investigation after a routine surgery nearly resulted in patient death. According to sources, the error was reported by fellow resident Dr. Daphne Hampton, who... The article went on, but Jasmine had stopped reading. Daphne Hampton had reported Jane Williams, had nearly cost her medical license. 4 years ago, 1 year before the accident that took Daphne's life. Oh my God, Jasmine whispered. She jumped out of bed, running down the hall to Greg's room. She didn't knock. Just burst through the door. Greg sat up immediately, alert. Jasmine, what's wrong? Jane, Jasmine gasped. It was Jane. She's the one who... But she couldn't finish the sentence, because another flash hit her. Harder than before. 3 years ago, in a car with her parents. Laughing. Happy. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, her father said. Dad, stop, you're embarrassing me. Let him brag, her mother laughed. My baby, the award-winning surgeon. Then the brakes failing, her father's panic, the crash, the horrible, sickening crunch of metal and bone. Waking up at the bottom of a ravine, bleeding, confused. Seeing Jane's face above her. Jane, thank God, help me, please. You took everything from me, Daphne. My career, my reputation, everything. What are you, Jane? What are you doing with that knife? Ending this, ending you. Hitting her head on a rock, everything going fuzzy. Waking up confused, not knowing her own name. Who are you? Jane's face changing, calculating. I'm a friend. You're from the fish village, honey. You're a fish seller. That's all you need to remember. Jasmine screamed. Greg was there immediately, catching her as she collapsed. Jasmine, talk to me. I remember, Jasmine sobbed. I remember everything. She tried to end me. Jane tried to end me. My parents, oh God, my parents. Your parents? Greg held her face gently. Jasmine, whose parents? Jasmine looked up at him with her one good eye, tears streaming down her face. Mine, she whispered. Richard and Diane Hampton. They were in the car. They didn't make it. And Jane. Jane found me at the bottom of the ravine, and she tried to finish what the crash started. But when she realized I didn't remember anything after a second fall, she gave me a fake identity instead. Made me think I was someone else. Made me forget you. Greg's face had gone white. You're Daphne. I'm Daphne, Jasmine confirmed. I'm her. I'm the woman you loved. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry I forgot you. Greg pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. But she didn't care, because for the first time in 3 years, she felt truly safe. You're alive, Greg whispered into her hair, his voice shaking. You're alive. That's all that matters. I don't care that you forgot. I don't care about anything except that you're here. You're real. You're alive. I forgot you, Daphne sobbed. I forgot us. I forgot everything. But you're remembering now, Greg said, pulling back to look at her. You're here, and I'm never letting you go again. Never. Greg, there's something else, Daphne said urgently. The accident. It wasn't an accident. If Jane was there, then she may have been the one who cut the brakes. She ended my parents. She tried to end me. And she's been living free this whole time, engaged to your cousin, pretending like she didn't destroy my entire life. Greg's expression turned dark. Dangerous. Then we're going to make sure she pays for what she did. How? We're going to prove who you are. We're going to expose what she did. And we're going to make sure Jane Williams never hurts anyone ever again. Daphne nodded, wiping her tears. Okay, how do we start? Greg pulled out his phone. We start by calling Kenneth, and then we're going to make a very important phone call to the police. And after that? Greg cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing over her scar. After that, we're going to figure out who we are now, because you might remember being Daphne Hampton, but you've also been Jasmine Carter for 3 years, and I've fallen for both of you. Daphne's breath caught. Greg. I loved Daphne, Greg said softly, but I'm falling in love with Jasmine. And now that you're both, now that you're whole, I'm never letting you go. He kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. And for the first time in 3 years, Daphne Hampton felt like she was finally home. The DNA testing facility was in a discreet medical building in Midtown. Kenneth had arranged everything with his usual efficiency. We're comparing your DNA to samples from Daphne Hampton's medical records, Kenneth explained as a technician swabbed Daphne's cheek. The hospital kept her blood work on file from when she was a surgical resident. We should have preliminary results within 4 hours. Full confirmation by tomorrow morning. And if it's a match? Daphne asked, watching the technician seal her sample. Then we have proof, Kenneth said. Legal, scientific proof of who you are, and we can start building a case against Jane Williams for what she did. After the test, they sat in Greg's car in the parking lot. Neither of them moved to start the engine. You scared? Greg asked quietly. Terrified, Daphne admitted. What if I'm not her? What if this is all just coincidence and I'm really just Jasmine Carter, fish vendor, who happens to have medical skills and weird memory flashes? Then you're still the woman I married, Greg said firmly. The woman I'm falling in love with. That doesn't change. And if I am her? If I'm Daphne? Greg was quiet for a moment. Then I get a second chance with the woman I lost, and I don't waste second chances. Daphne looked at him. You really mean that, don't you? You don't care which one I am. I care about you, Greg corrected. Whoever you are, whatever name you go by, you could decide tomorrow that you want to be called Betty and go back to selling fish full time, and I'd still want to be with you. Despite everything, Daphne laughed. Betty? It was the first name that came to mind, Greg said with a grin. The point is, I'm not in love with a name or a memory. I'm in love with you. The woman sitting in my car right now, the woman who saves lives and sells fish and tells my mother off and makes me laugh. That's who I want. Daphne leaned across the console and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered against his lips. For what? For seeing me. Not who I was or who I might be. Just me. Always, Greg promised. Where are we going? Daphne asked as Greg drove them away from the testing facility. Somewhere special, Greg said. Somewhere that might help you remember. He drove them to Piedmont Park. It was early afternoon, and the park was alive with activity. Joggers on the trails, families having picnics, dogs chasing frisbees. The sun filtered through the massive oak trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the paths. We used to come here, Greg said as they walked, his hand warm in hers. Every Sunday morning. It was our thing. Tell me about it, Daphne said. You'd work insane hours at the hospital all week, Greg began, his voice soft with memory. 36-hour shifts sometimes. You'd be exhausted, running on coffee and pure stubbornness. But Sunday mornings were ours. We'd get coffee from that stand over there. He pointed to a small coffee cart, and walk the entire park loop, sometimes talking, sometimes just quiet, but together. Daphne looked around, trying to feel something, trying to remember. What did we talk about? She asked. Everything, Greg smiled. You'd tell me about your surgeries, The ones you could discuss without violating privacy. About the patients you saved and the ones you couldn't. You'd get this look in your eye when you talked about the complicated cases. Like you were solving a puzzle. It was beautiful. What else? I'd complain about board meetings and corporate politics. You'd make fun of me for being a fancy CEO when I grew up hunting squirrels in rural Georgia with a homemade slingshot. Greg laughed. You'd say it was the most country thing you'd ever heard. It is pretty country, Daphne teased. Says the woman who spent 3 years selling fish at a market. That's different. How? Daphne opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, smiled. Okay, fine. We're both country in our own ways. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Greg led her off the main path to a bench under a massive oak tree. This was our bench, he said quietly. Our spot. We'd sit here for hours. You'd fall asleep on my shoulder after those long shifts. I'd just hold you and watch the world go by and think about how lucky I was. Daphne sat down slowly. The wood was worn smooth. The tree's roots had grown around the bench legs like it was claiming it. She touched the back of the bench and another memory slammed into her. Sitting here, younger, both eyes working. No scar. Greg, I got the fellowship. Baby, that's incredible. I knew you would. It's in Boston, 2 years. Watching his face fall, the pain in his eyes. But I turned it down. What? Daphne, no, that's your dream. You're my dream. Boston can wait. We can't. Him kissing her, deep and desperate and full of love. I love you, God, I love you so much. I love you too, always. Daphne gasped, her hand flying to her chest. The memory was so vivid, so real, she could still feel his lips on hers. Daphne? Greg was instantly alert, concerned. What is it? What did you see? Boston, she whispered. The fellowship. I turned it down. Greg's eyes went wide. You remember that? You were so upset, Daphne continued, the memory crystallizing. You spent weeks trying to convince me to change my mind. You didn't want me to give up my dreams for you. You said you'd wait, that we could do long distance. But I said... She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I said you were worth it, that we were worth it. You did, Greg confirmed, his own voice thick with emotion. You said that as long as we were together, nothing else mattered. That you'd rather spend 2 years with me than 2 years becoming the best surgeon in the country without me. Was I right? Daphne asked. Looking back now, did I make the right choice? Greg cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. You made the choice that felt right to you. And I loved you for it. But baby, you need to know something. What? I would have waited, Greg said intensely. If I'd known what was going to happen, if I'd known I was going to lose you anyway, I would have made you go to Boston. I would have waited 2 years, 10 years, forever if it meant you were safe and happy and becoming everything you were meant to be. But you didn't lose me, Daphne said. I'm right here. I lost 3 years with you, Greg said. 3 years where you were alone and scared and didn't even know who you were. 3 years where I could have been looking for you instead of mourning you. If you'd been in Boston, you would have been safe. You don't know that, Daphne said firmly. Greg, you can't blame yourself for what Jane did. The accident wasn't your fault. My amnesia wasn't your fault. Jane's choices were her own. I know, Greg said, but that doesn't stop me from wishing I could have protected you. You're protecting me now, Daphne said. That's what matters. She pulled him down to sit beside her on the bench. On their bench. And they sat there, wrapped in each other's arms as the world moved around them. Tell me more, Daphne said after a while. About us, about who we were. So Greg told her. About their first date. Dinner at a tiny Ethiopian restaurant because Daphne had never tried it and wanted to. About how she'd laughed so hard at his attempts to eat with injera bread that she'd snorted wine out of her nose. About the time she'd made him watch all 9 hours of a medical documentary series and he'd fallen asleep 3 hours in and she'd drawn a mustache on his face with a surgical marker. About Sunday morning pancakes and Tuesday night tacos and the way she'd steal his hoodies and claim they were hers now. About how she'd hum while she cooked, always slightly off key, and how it was his favorite sound in the world. I want to remember all of it, Daphne said. Not just flashes, everything. You will, Greg promised. It's coming back. Every day you remember more. What if I never remember everything? What if there are pieces of Daphne that are just gone? Then we make new memories, Greg said simply. We fill in the blanks with new stories, better stories, stories where you don't disappear, where we don't lose 3 years, where we grow old together and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. Daphne laughed, the sound watery but genuine. That's very romantic. Trash duty. I'm a romantic guy, Greg said with a grin. What can I say? They sat there until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Daphne felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like peace. The peace was disrupted when Greg's phone rang. Kenneth. The preliminary results are in, Kenneth said. It's a match. Jasmine Carter and Daphne Hampton are genetically identical. She's the same person. Greg looked at Daphne. It's confirmed. You're Daphne. Daphne let out a long, shaky breath. She'd known, somewhere deep inside. But hearing it confirmed made it real. So I'm her, she said quietly. I'm really her. How do you feel? Greg asked. I don't know, Daphne admitted. Relieved, scared, sad, all of the above? She looked at her hands, the hands that had saved Malcolm, the hands that had filleted fish for 3 years, the hands that had once performed delicate surgeries. I feel like I'm meeting myself for the first time. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Greg said. What happens now? Daphne asked. Now, Kenneth said over the phone, still on speaker. We need to discuss next steps. With this DNA confirmation, we can go to the police with your statement about Jane, about what she did. No, Daphne said. Not yet. Daphne, Greg started. Think about it, Daphne interrupted. If we go to the police now, what do we have? My word against hers. A woman who's had amnesia for 3 years, accusing a respected surgeon of attempted murder based on recovered memories? Any half-decent lawyer will shred that in court. She's right, Kenneth admitted reluctantly. Recovered memories are notoriously unreliable in court. We'd need corroborating evidence. The Hampton estate, Daphne said, her mind racing. Jane has been living there, right? Managing it for me? According to our investigation, yes, Kenneth confirmed. Then that's where the evidence will be, Daphne said. Financial records, documents. Maybe something that ties her to the brake tampering. Maybe even something from the night of the accident. What are you thinking? Greg asked. I need to get into that house, Daphne said. It's legally mine, right? As Daphne Hampton? Technically, yes, Kenneth said. Though Jane has been acting as executor of the estate pending your legal death declaration. But I'm not dead, Daphne said firmly. I'm very much alive, which means I have every right to enter my own home. We'll go together, Greg said immediately. Not yet, Daphne said. First, we use the vault. The vault? Greg frowned. Malcolm mentioned it at the hospital, remember? The Hampton family vault. It requires biometric access. Fingerprints, retinal scan, voice recognition. Only I can open it. What's in it? Kenneth asked. Family documents, my parents' will, deeds to properties, financial records going back generations. Daphne's eye gleamed. And possibly evidence of Jane's embezzlement. If she's been managing the estate, I guarantee she's been helping herself to funds. So we use the vault as bait, Greg said, catching on. We announce that you're opening it. Jane will panic. Exactly, Daphne said. She'll have to make a move. Either she'll try to stop me or she'll try to destroy evidence. Either way, she'll slip up. And we'll be ready. Greg finished. Kenneth was quiet for a moment. It's risky. Jane already tried to hurt me once, Daphne said. She's going to try again whether we bait her or not. At least this way, we control the when and where. All right, Kenneth said. I'll draft a press release. Daphne Hampton, presumed deceased, has been found alive and will be opening the family vault to reclaim her inheritance. We'll schedule it for tomorrow afternoon at the Hampton estate. Do it, Daphne said. If you're invested in this story, if you want to see Jane get what's coming to her, drop a comment right now, share this with someone who loves a good revenge story, and make sure you're subscribed because what happens next is intense. Back to the story. The press release went out at 8 p.m. By 8:30, it was trending on social media. By 9 every major news outlet in Atlanta was covering it. Daphne Hampton alive. Presumed dead heiress to open family vault after 3 years. And across town in her upscale apartment, Jane Williams saw the headline and felt her entire world start to crumble. Her phone rang. Brandon. Have you seen the news? He demanded. Daphne Hampton is alive? How is that possible? I don't know. Jane lied, her voice shaking. It must be a mistake. Some kind of fraud? It's not fraud, Brandon interrupted. They have DNA confirmation. And your reaction that day she came to the gala? It's really her, isn't she? Which means, Jane, if Daphne's alive, what happens to the estate? You said you'd have access to the Hampton fortune once the death declaration went through. I will, Jane said desperately. This changes nothing. It changes everything, Brandon shouted. You've been living in her house, managing her accounts. If she comes back and audits everything, she'll see. He stopped. Oh my God, Jane, what did you do? Nothing, Jane said. I managed the estate properly. I did everything by the book. You're lying, Brandon said flatly. I can hear it in your voice. You took money, didn't you? You've been embezzling from a dead woman's estate. She wasn't supposed to come back, Jane screamed, then caught herself, lowered her voice. She was dead, Brandon, legally dead. I was just managing things until the estate settled. Managing, Brandon repeated coldly. Is that what you call it? He was quiet for a moment. Don't contact me again. When this blows up, and it will blow up, I want nothing to do with it. He hung up. Jane stood there, staring at her phone, watching her perfect life disintegrate. Then she made a decision. She grabbed her car keys and headed for the Hampton estate. If there was evidence, she needed to destroy it. Tonight, Kenneth's security team called at 10:15 p.m. Jane just left her apartment, the team leader reported. She's heading toward Buckhead. Looks like she's going to the Hampton estate. Greg and Daphne looked at each other. She's going to destroy evidence, Daphne said. Then we need to get there first, Greg said, already grabbing his jacket. They made it to the Hampton estate in 20 minutes. Kenneth met them there with a small security team. We can't legally stop her from entering, Kenneth said. She has keys and she's been living here as executor. But we can observe and document everything she does. Good, Daphne said. Let's see what she's so desperate to hide. They entered through the back door, lucky to find it open, and made their way quietly to her father's study. The house was dark, silent, exactly as Daphne remembered and completely foreign at the same time. This way, she whispered, leading them down the hall. Memories flashed with every step. Running down this hallway as a child, her mother calling her for dinner, her father's laugh echoing from his study. They reached the study door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, they could hear movement. Drawers opening and closing. Papers rustling. Greg positioned himself at the door, ready to intervene if necessary. Kenneth had his phone out, ready to record. And Daphne stood there, looking at the door to her father's sanctuary, gathering her courage. Then she pushed it open. Hello, Jane. Jane froze. She was standing at Daphne's father's desk, her arms full of files and documents. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. She looked nothing like the polished surgeon from the gala. She looked cornered. Daphne, Jane said, her voice carefully controlled. What are you doing here? I think that's my question, Daphne said. stepping into the room. "This is my house? My father's study? What are you doing with those files?" "I was just organizing," Jane said weakly. "The estate has been in chaos." "At 10:30 at night?" Daphne raised an eyebrow. "That's some dedication." Jane's eyes darted to the door, where Greg and Kenneth now stood, blocking her exit. "You have no right to be here," Jane said, her voice rising. "This estate is under my management until I was declared legally dead," Daphne finished. "Except I'm not dead, Jane. I'm very much alive. Which means your management is over. And I want to know exactly what you've been managing." Jane's hands tightened on the files. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" Daphne walked closer. "Because I'm pretty sure those files you're holding, the ones you're clearly trying to steal, contain evidence of embezzlement. Am I right?" "I haven't embezzled anything," Jane hissed. "I've been maintaining this estate, keeping it running." "With my money," Daphne said. "Money that wasn't yours to touch." "You were dead," Jane screamed. "You were supposed to be dead. I saw you go into that ravine. I watched you fall." The room went silent. Jane realized what she'd said. Her face went pale. "You watched me fall," Daphne repeated quietly. "How did you watch me fall, Jane, unless you were there?" "I didn't. I meant—" Jane was backing up now, but there was nowhere to go. "You were there," Daphne said, pieces clicking into place. "The night of the accident. You were there. How, Jane? How did you just happen to be at the scene of my family's accident?" Jane's expression shifted, from panic to something colder, harder. "You started it first," she said, her voice flat now. "You think I forgave you trying to ruin my career? I never did." "So you sabotaged the car," Daphne said. "I had the brakes cut," Jane corrected. "I just wanted to scare you, make you too shaken to go to the medical board meeting where you were supposed to testify against me. But then your parents were in the car too, and—" She trailed off. "And they passed away on impact," Daphne finished, her voice breaking. "My parents, my mother and father. Because you wanted to scare me?" "It was an accident," Jane insisted. "I never meant for them to. I just wanted you to stop ruining my life." "I reported you because you almost ended a patient," Daphne shouted. "You made a mistake during surgery that could have been fatal. I had an ethical obligation to report it." "You had an obligation to protect me," Jane screamed back. "I was your friend, your best friend, and you chose your precious ethics over me. So you ended my parents and tried to end me too?" Daphne's voice was ice cold now. "When you found me in that ravine, you could have helped me. You could have called for help. But instead, you stood over me with a knife and tried to finish what the crash started." "You don't remember that," Jane said desperately. "You have amnesia. Your memories aren't reliable." "I remember everything," Daphne said. "I remember you standing over me. I remember asking you for help. I remember you saying I took everything from you. I remember you raising that knife. And I remember hitting my head again and waking up confused, and you telling me I was a fish seller from a fish village." "You can't prove any of that," Jane said, but her voice was shaking. "Actually," Kenneth said, holding up his phone, "we've been recording this entire conversation, including the part where you just confessed to tampering with the brakes and admitting you were at the scene of the accident." Jane's face went white. "And," Daphne said, walking to the desk, "I'm willing to bet these files you're trying to steal contain bank records showing exactly where my family's money has been going for the past 3 years." Jane collapsed into the desk chair, her face in her hands, broken. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to go this way. None of this was supposed to happen." "But it did," Daphne said coldly. "And now you're going to pay for it." Kenneth was already on the phone with the police. But Jane wasn't done. In one swift motion, she opened her purse and pulled out a GUN. "Nobody's going to jail," she said, her voice eerily calm now. "Because nobody's leaving this room. The worst mistake was letting you leave that ravine alive, amnesic or not." Jane pointed the GUN at Daphne. "But I won't make it twice." She pulled the trigger. Everything happened at once. Greg shouted, "Gun!" Kenneth lunged forward, but Greg was faster. He threw himself in front of Daphne just as the gun fired. The bullet hit him in the chest. He went down, and Daphne screamed. Time slowed down. Daphne watched Greg fall, saw the blood bloom across his white shirt, heard herself screaming his name as if from a distance. Then her training kicked in. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands immediately going to the wound. Greg, stay with me. Behind her, she was vaguely aware of Kenneth tackling Jane, wrestling the gun away from her. Security flooding in, voices shouting. But all of Daphne's focus was on Greg. Kenneth, call 911, she barked, her hands already applying pressure to the wound. Gunshot wound to the upper left chest. Possible lung involvement. He's conscious, but Greg, look at me, look at me. Greg's eyes fluttered open. Daphne, don't talk. Save your strength. Her hands moved with practiced precision, checking the entry wound, checking for an exit wound. The bullet's still in there. You're going to be okay. You hear me? You're going to be fine. Bossy. Doctor. Greg managed a weak smile. Damn right, I'm bossy, Daphne said, tears streaming down her face even as her hands stayed steady. And you're going to do exactly what I say. You're going to stay awake, you're going to keep breathing, and you're going to live. Because I just got my memories back, and I am not losing you again. Understand? Yes, ma'am, Greg whispered. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, Kenneth said, kneeling beside them. He'd zip-tied Jane's hands behind her back. She was sitting against the wall, crying hysterically. 2 minutes too long, Daphne muttered. Greg, I need you to focus on me. Tell me something. Tell me about our first date. Ethiopian restaurant, Greg said, his voice getting weaker. You snorted wine. Out your nose. That's right, Daphne said, keeping him talking, keeping him conscious. And you laughed so hard you couldn't breathe, remember? And I was so embarrassed, but you said it was the cutest thing you'd ever seen. Still, is... Greg's eyes were starting to close. No, Daphne said sharply. Eyes on me, Greg Daniels. You stay with me. You promised you wouldn't leave me. You promised. Not leaving, Greg whispered. Never leaving you again. Then prove it, Daphne said. Stay awake. The ambulance is almost here. Sirens wailed outside. Paramedics burst into the study. Gunshot wound to the upper left chest, Daphne reported immediately, her voice steady and professional despite the tears on her face. Entry wound approximately 2 inches below the clavicle. No exit wound. Patient is conscious, breathing labored, likely tension pneumothorax. He needs immediate transport and surgical intervention. The lead paramedic looked at her in surprise. Are you a doctor? Yes, Daphne said, and for the first time in 3 years, saying it felt right. I'm a surgeon. They loaded Greg onto a stretcher. Daphne climbed into the ambulance without being asked. Ma'am, only family? One of the paramedics started. I'm his wife, Daphne said firmly, and I'm a trauma surgeon. I'm staying with him. The paramedic looked at her blood-covered hands, her tear-stained face, and nodded. Yes, ma'am. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens blaring, Daphne held Greg's hand and prayed to every deity she could think of. She'd lost 3 years with him. She wasn't losing him permanently. Not now. Not ever. The operating room lights were blinding. Daphne stood outside the OR, still covered in Greg's blood, watching through the observation window as the surgical team worked on him. She felt helpless, watching strangers cut into the man she loved, wishing she knew where her medical ID was so she could get a spot in there and make sure things were being done right. Mrs. Daniels? Daphne turned. A nurse she didn't recognize stood there with a tablet. I need you to sign consent forms for the surgery, the nurse said gently. You're listed as his wife? Yes, Daphne said. I'm his wife. Saying it out loud made it real, made the terror real. She signed the forms with shaking hands. He's going to be okay, the nurse said kindly. Dr. Chen is the best thoracic surgeon in Atlanta. If anyone can save him, it's her. Daphne nodded mutely. The nurse left, and Daphne went back to watching through the glass. "Come on, Greg," she whispered. "You don't get to propose to me and then leave me. That's not how this works." 3 hours later, Dr. Chen emerged from the OR, pulling off her surgical mask. Daphne jumped to her feet. "Is he?" "He's alive," Dr. Chen said immediately. "The bullet missed his heart by 2 inches, punctured the upper lobe of his left lung, but we were able to repair it. He lost a lot of blood, but he's stable. He's going to make it." Daphne's legs gave out. She sat down hard, her whole body shaking with relief. "Can I see him?" she asked. "He's in recovery. They'll move him to ICU in about an hour. You can see him then." Dr. Chen sat down beside her. "You're Daphne Hampton, aren't you? The surgeon who disappeared 3 years ago?" Daphne nodded. "I was a resident when you were here," Dr. Chen said. "You operated on my first solo case when I made a mistake. You just taught me, showed me what I did wrong and how to fix it. You saved my career that day." "I don't remember that," Daphne admitted. "You wouldn't. You did it for a lot of people. You were kind like that." Dr. Chen smiled. "I'm glad you're back, Dr. Hampton. The hospital missed you. I missed you." After Dr. Chen left, Daphne sat in the waiting room, processing everything. She was Daphne Hampton, surgeon, healer, the woman who saved careers and lives. But she was also Jasmine Carter, fish vendor, survivor, the woman who'd built a life from nothing. Could she be both? Did she have to choose? "Daphne?" She looked up. Kenneth was there, looking exhausted but relieved. "Greg?" he asked. "He's going to make it," Daphne said. "He's stable." Kenneth let out a long breath. "Thank God." "What about Jane?" "In custody. Police have her on attempted murder for shooting Greg, plus your testimony about the car accident and what she did to you. They found the files she was trying to steal, evidence of her embezzling over $2 million from the Hampton estate over 3 years. $2 million? Daphne felt sick. "She was desperate," Kenneth said. "She's a gambling addict. The gambling debts were real. She owed dangerous people. She took your family's money to pay them off." "So she ended my parents for money," Daphne said flatly. "And to cover up her medical malpractice," Kenneth added. Daphne closed her eye, fighting back tears. "My parents would have paid her debts if she'd just asked. They would have gotten her help." "I know," Kenneth said gently. "But Jane didn't want help. She wanted your life, and she was willing to destroy you to get it." When they finally let Daphne into the ICU, Greg was awake. Groggy, pale, with tubes and monitors everywhere. But awake. "Hey," he said, his voice raspy. "Hey yourself," Daphne said, pulling a chair up to his bedside. She took his hand carefully, mindful of the IV. "You scared me." "Sorry," Greg said. "Seemed like the gentlemanly thing to do, taking a bullet for my wife." "Your fake wife," Daphne corrected automatically. "About that," Greg said. "I've been thinking. You just got shot. You shouldn't be thinking. You should be resting." "Daphne," Greg said seriously, "I want to make it real." "Make what real?" "The marriage. Us." Greg squeezed her hand. "I know we started this as a business arrangement. 6 months, 500,000 a month, then we go our separate ways. But I don't want to go my separate way. I want to stay with you. For real. Forever." Daphne felt tears prick her eye. "Greg." "Let me finish," Greg interrupted. "I fell in love with you twice. Once as Daphne Hampton, brilliant surgeon who saved my life and stole my heart. And once as Jasmine Carter, stubborn fish vendor who helped me hide from my mother and made me laugh and showed me what real strength looks like. And now that you're both, I'm more in love with you than I ever thought possible." "You're on a lot of pain medication," Daphne said, laughing through her tears. "You might not mean this." "I mean every word," Greg said. "Marry me, for real this time. Not because I'm paying you, not because we need to fool my family, but because I love you, All of you, Daphne and Jasmine and whoever else you want to be. Marry me because you love me too. I do love you, Daphne whispered. So much it scares me. Is that a yes? That's a ask me again when you're not hopped up on morphine, Daphne said. Because when you propose to me for real, I want you to remember it. Deal, Greg said with a smile. Then, Daphne? Yeah? I'm really glad you didn't die. Me too, Daphne said. Me too. She stayed with him until he fell asleep, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall. He was alive. They were both alive, and Jane Williams was going to pay for trying to change that. 2 days later, Greg was moved out of ICU into a regular room. Malcolm came to visit, fresh out of his own hospital stay, with strict orders from his doctors to take it easy. 2 men shot and nearly strangled in 1 week, Malcolm said, settling into the visitor's chair with a groan. This family is a mess. You were choking, not strangled, Grandpa, Greg corrected from his hospital bed. Same difference. Nearly died either way. Malcolm turned to Daphne. And you. You saved both of us. You're racking up quite the life-saving resume. Just doing my job, Daphne said. Your job is selling fish, Malcolm said with a twinkle in his eye. Or have you decided to go back to being a fancy surgeon? I don't know, Daphne admitted. Can I be both? Why not? Malcolm said. Who says you have to be one thing? You're Daphne Hampton, heir to a medical dynasty and a fortune. And you're Jasmine Carter, fish vendor and member of the Carter family. Why choose? Because people will expect me to, Daphne said. The medical community will want Dr. Hampton back. The Hampton estate comes with responsibilities. I can't just what? Malcolm interrupted. Live your life the way you want to? Says who? Society, tradition, the Hampton name? The Hampton name is yours, Malcolm said firmly. You get to decide what it means. If you want to be a surgeon on weekdays and sell fish on Saturdays, you do that. If you want to use the Hampton fortune to help the Carter family, you do that. If you want to tell everyone to mind their own business while you figure out who you are, you absolutely do that. Daphne felt something loosen in her chest. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, Malcolm said. But it's your choice, and that's what matters. Patricia appeared in the doorway carrying flowers. Am I interrupting? Just giving life advice, Malcolm said. Come in, daughter. Tell this girl she can do whatever she wants. Patricia set the flowers on Greg's bedside table. I'm not sure I'm qualified to give life advice right now. I've been trying to control my son's life for years, and look where it got him. Shot in a hospital bed. Mom, Greg started. No, let me say this. Patricia turned to Daphne. You saved my father's life. You saved my son's life. You did that with skills and knowledge that you shouldn't have according to your cover story, which means you've been hiding who you really are. I wasn't hiding, Daphne said. I genuinely didn't remember. I know, Patricia said, but even after you started remembering, you could have demanded we all treat you like the Hampton heiress you are. You could have lorded your wealth and status over us, but you didn't. You just kept being yourself. Honest, brave, real. She sat down in the other visitor's chair. I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually, for judging you, for being cruel, for trying to drive you away from my son. I was wrong about you. Completely wrong. Mrs. Daniels, Patricia, she corrected. Or Mom, if you prefer. You're family now. Whether the marriage started as fake or not, you're Greg's wife, and you're the woman who saved his life. That makes you family. Daphne felt tears well up. Thank you. Now, Patricia said briskly, what are we doing about that horrible woman who tried to murder you? Jane Williams's arraignment was held 3 days later. Daphne sat in the courtroom, Greg beside her in a wheelchair against his doctor's orders, Kenneth on her other side. The Carter family had come too. Mama Louise, Dad Thomas, and DeAndre, all dressed in their Sunday best. Jane was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked small, broken, nothing like the polished surgeon who'd walked into the gala a week ago. Ms. Williams, you are charged with murder in the first degree, 2 counts. The deaths of Richard and Diane Hampton caused during your attempted murder of their daughter. Attempted murder in the first degree, 3 counts, for the attacks on Daphne Hampton and Gregory Daniels. Embezzlement and fraud, multiple counts. How does the defendant plead? The judge asked. Jane's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client wishes to enter a guilty plea on all counts. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Ms. Williams, the judge said, do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're waiving your right to a trial? Yes, Your Honor, Jane said quietly. And you understand the potential consequences? You're looking at 25 years to life in prison. I understand, Jane said. She turned to look at Daphne. I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know you'll never forgive me, but I am sorry. Daphne stood up. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded. Go ahead, Ms. Hampton. Daphne walked to the front of the courtroom, faced Jane directly. You took my parents from me, she said, her voice steady. You tried to take my life. You stole my memories, my identity, 3 years of my existence. You made me believe I was nobody. You used my family's money to pay off your gambling debts. You shot the man I love. Jane was crying silently. You want me to forgive you? Daphne continued. I can't, not ever. What you did was unforgivable, but... She paused, gathering her thoughts. But I'm not going to let what you did define the rest of my life. I'm not going to spend the next 20 years being angry and bitter and broken. I'm going to live. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to honor my parents by being the person they raised me to be. A healer, a helper, someone who makes the world better. Daphne stepped closer. So no, Jane, I don't forgive you. But I'm choosing to move forward anyway. I'm choosing joy and love and life. And I'm choosing to let the justice system handle you while I go build something beautiful with the time I have left. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I ask that you give her the maximum sentence. Not because I want revenge, but because she's dangerous. She's hurt too many people, and the world needs to be protected from her. The judge nodded slowly. Sentencing will be scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Until then, Ms. Williams will remain in custody without bail. Jane was led away, and Daphne walked back to Greg. Together they left the courthouse without looking back. The Hampton vault opening was scheduled for the following week, giving Greg time to recover enough to attend. The press was there. News cameras, reporters. Everyone wanted to see the miracle return of Daphne Hampton. Daphne stood in front of the vault in her childhood home, surrounded by lawyers, accountants, and family. The Daniels family was there. Patricia, Malcolm, even Brandon, who'd been cleared of any involvement in Jane's schemes and looked appropriately humiliated. The Carter family was there too. Mama Louise holding Daphne's hand, Dad Thomas standing proud, DeAndre filming everything on his phone. And Greg was there, out of his wheelchair now but moving carefully, positioned right beside Daphne. Ms. Hampton, the head lawyer said, whenever you're ready. Daphne approached the vault. It was massive, a reinforced steel door built into the wall of her father's study, installed by her great-grandfather 70 years ago. The biometric scanner lit up. First, handprint. Daphne placed her right hand on the scanner. It glowed green. Match. Second, retinal scan. Daphne leaned forward, letting the scanner read her eye. Her right eye, the one that still worked. It beeped. Match. Third, voice activation. State your full name and authorization code, the computer prompted. Daphne took a deep breath. Daphne Marie Hampton, authorization code, Nightingale. The vault hummed, gears turned, locks disengaged, and the door swung open. Inside was a small room lined with shelves and filing cabinets, documents in protective cases, jewelry boxes, photographs. And on the center shelf, a letter addressed to Daphne. Daphne picked it up with shaking hands. The handwriting was her father's. She opened it and read, My dearest Daphne, if you're reading this, it means something has happened to your mother and me. I pray this day never comes, but a father must be prepared for all possibilities. First, know that we love you beyond measure. You are our greatest joy, our proudest accomplishment. Not because you're brilliant or talented or accomplished, though you are all those things, but because you are kind, because you use your gifts to help others, because you make the world brighter simply by being in it. The Hampton fortune is now yours, all of it. The estate, the investments, the foundation. Use it wisely. Use it generously. Use it to continue the work we started, helping those who cannot help themselves. But Daphne, my darling girl, remember this. You are not defined by money or status or the Hampton name. You are defined by your character, by your choices, by the love you give and the lives you touch. Whether you choose to be a surgeon or a teacher or a fishmonger or anything else, do it with joy. Do it with purpose. Do it with the knowledge that your mother and I are proud of you. Always. Live fully, Daphne. Love deeply. And never forget that you are loved beyond measure. Your father, Richard Hampton. P.S. There's a box on the bottom shelf marked for Daphne's wedding day. I hope you'll open it when the time comes. I hope I'm there to see it. But if I'm not, know that I'm with you in spirit, celebrating the love you've found. Daphne was sobbing by the time she finished reading. Greg wrapped his arms around her and she cried into his chest. Mama Louise was crying too. Dad Thomas wiped his eyes. Even Patricia looked misty. Do you want to see what's in the box? Kenneth asked gently. Daphne nodded. She found the box on the bottom shelf, exactly where her father said it would be. A beautiful wooden box with Daphne carved into the lid. Inside were two things: her mother's wedding ring, a simple platinum band with a small diamond, and a photograph of her parents on their wedding day, young and happy and in love. On the back of the photo, her mother had written, "May you find a love as true as ours." Daphne looked up at Greg through her tears. I think I did. Greg smiled. Yeah, I think you did too. That night, after the lawyers had cataloged everything in the vault, after the press had gotten their photos and gone home, after the Carter family had been driven back to their apartment in a car Daphne had hired for them, Daphne and Greg sat on the steps of the Hampton estate looking up at the stars. So, Greg said, you're officially a multi-millionaire now. We're multi-millionaires, Daphne corrected. You married me, remember? What's mine is yours. That was a fake marriage, Greg pointed out. Was it though? Daphne asked. I mean, we signed legal documents. We have a marriage license. We live together. We love each other. At what point does fake become real? Good point, Greg said. So we're really married. We're really married, Daphne confirmed. Although what? Although I'd like to do it again, Daphne said. With our families there. With vows that we write ourselves. With intention and joy and celebration. Greg turned to face her fully. Daphne Hampton. Gregory Daniels. Will you marry me? Greg asked. Again? For real this time? With terrible speeches from my grandfather and your adoptive brother filming it on his phone and your mother crying and my mother trying not to cry? Yes, Daphne said, laughing. Yes, I'll marry you again. And again after that if you want. I'll marry you as many times as you ask. Once more should do it, Greg said, pulling her in for a kiss. But I appreciate the enthusiasm. They kissed under the stars, in front of the house where Daphne grew up, surrounded by the ghosts of her past and the promise of their future. Daphne felt complete. Not because she'd recovered her memories, not because she'd reclaimed her fortune, but because she'd found her way home, to herself, to Greg, to the life she was meant to live. The wedding was held 2 months later. 2 months for Greg to heal fully from the gunshot wound. 2 months for Daphne to settle the Hampton estate and establish a foundation in her parents' names. 2 months for the Carter family to move into the nice house Daphne bought them, over their protests, which she ignored. 2 months for DeAndre to get accepted into Georgia Tech's engineering program with a full scholarship, supplemented by the Hampton Educational Foundation that Daphne had started. 2 months for Daphne to return to practicing medicine, part-time at the hospital, part-time at a free clinic she'd opened in East Atlanta, and 2 months for her to keep her Saturday fish stand at Westside Market, much to everyone's confusion and delight. "You're a millionaire surgeon," Big Joe said every Saturday. "Why are you still here selling catfish?" "Because I like it," Daphne would say. "And because this is where I met my husband. It's good luck." The wedding was held in Piedmont Park, under the oak tree where Greg and Daphne used to sit on their bench. It was small, intimate, just family and close friends. Mama Louise wore a purple dress and cried through the entire ceremony. Dad Thomas walked Daphne down the aisle, proud as could be. Kenneth was Greg's best man, and DeAndre did film the whole thing on his phone. Malcolm officiated, because apparently he was ordained online specifically for this occasion. Patricia sat in the front row wearing a tasteful hat and only cried a little, which for Patricia was a lot. Daphne wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her. She wore her mother's ring on her right hand and her father's medical school class ring on a chain around her neck. Greg wore a simple black suit and a smile that hadn't left his face in 2 months. When it was time for vows, Malcolm stepped aside and let them speak. "Daphne," Greg started, his voice thick with emotion. "The first time I fell in love with you, you saved my life in an ambulance. The second time, you saved it by hiding me behind your fish stand. And every day since, you've saved it just by being you. You're the strongest person I know, the kindest, the bravest. You've lived 2 lives and somehow made both of them beautiful, and I'm honored that you're choosing to share your next life with me." He paused, smiling through tears. "I promise to love all of you. Dr. Daphne Hampton, brilliant surgeon. Jasmine Carter, fish vendor extraordinaire. And whoever else you decide to be tomorrow or next year or 50 years from now. I promise to support your dreams, to laugh at your jokes even when they're terrible, and to always, always choose you. In this life and whatever comes next." Daphne was crying openly now. "Greg, when I woke up 3 years ago with no memory and a scar that changed my face, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But I was wrong. I hadn't lost everything. I'd just been given a chance to start over, to rebuild myself from scratch, to figure out who I was without all the pressure and expectations." She took his hands. "And then I met you, a ridiculous man running from his mother, hiding behind fish buckets, looking at me like I was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. You didn't see my scar. You didn't see damaged goods or poor fish vendor. You just saw me. And you chose me anyway." "Easy choice," Greg whispered. "I promise," Daphne continued, "to love you with everything I am, Daphne and Jasmine and whoever I become next. I promise to keep you on your toes, to challenge you, to support you, and to sell fish on Saturdays even when you think it's ridiculous." "It is ridiculous," Greg said, laughing. "I promise to be your partner, your best friend, your wife, for real this time, for as long as we both live." Malcolm cleared his throat. "By the power vested in me by the internet and the state of Georgia, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, for real this time. Greg, kiss your wife before she changes her mind." Greg didn't need to be told twice. He pulled Daphne into his arms and kissed her to cheers and applause and the clicking of DeAndre's phone camera. And when they pulled apart, Daphne was smiling so wide her face hurt. "Hi, husband," she said. "Hi, wife," Greg said. "Ready to start our real life together?" "I'm ready," Daphne said. "Let's go." Months later. Daphne stood in the operating room at Grady Memorial Hospital, her hands steady as she repaired a complicated thoracic injury. "Suction," she said calmly. "Good. Now let's get a better look at this bleeder." "Dr. Hampton," one of the residents said in awe, "your hands are so steady." "How do you do that?" "Practice," Daphne said. "And also, I used to fillet fish for a living, which is surprisingly similar to surgery." The whole OR laughed. After the surgery, Daphne changed out of her scrubs and checked her phone. Text from Greg. "Dinner at 7? I'm making your favorite." Daphne. "Your cooking scares me." Greg. I ordered takeout. I'm not a monster. Daphne. Much better. See you at 7. Love you. Greg. Love you more. Text from Mama Louise. Sunday dinner at our place? DeAndre's bringing his girlfriend. Don't be late. Daphne smiled. Some things never changed. Text from Big Joe. Fish delivery came in early? You working the stand tomorrow? Daphne. Wouldn't miss it. She drove home to the penthouse. Greg had refused to move into the Hampton estate, saying it was too big and he liked his place better. They'd compromised by keeping both and alternating. When she walked in, Greg was setting the table with takeout from their favorite Thai place. How was surgery? He asked, kissing her hello. Successful, saved a life, just another Tuesday. My wife, the superhero surgeon, Greg said proudly. My husband, the CEO who can't cook, Daphne countered. Hey, I made toast this morning. You burned toast this morning. I made an attempt at toast, Greg corrected. It's the thought that counts. They ate dinner talking about their days. Greg told her about a new real estate development. Daphne told him about the free clinic's expansion. They were adding a dental wing. The Hampton Foundation approved the funding, she said. We break ground next month. Your parents would be proud, Greg said. I think so too, Daphne agreed. After dinner, they sat on the balcony, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. Do you ever regret it? Greg asked. Giving up the Boston Fellowship? Choosing me over your career advancement? Never, Daphne said immediately. Because it wasn't a choice between you and my career. It was a choice between different kinds of happiness. And I chose the happiness that included you. Even after everything? The accident, the amnesia, Jane? Especially after all that, Daphne said. Because I got to fall in love with you twice. How many people can say that? Just us, Greg said, pulling her close. Just us, Daphne agreed. They sat there in comfortable silence, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the city lights twinkle. And Daphne thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Daphne Hampton, brilliant surgeon, to Jasmine Carter, fish vendor, and back to Daphne again. But different, better, whole. She'd lost 3 years of her life, lost her parents, lost her memories. But she'd gained something too. She'd gained the Carter family, who loved her when she had nothing. She'd gained humility, working with her hands at the fish market. She'd gained perspective, seeing life from the bottom up instead of the top down. She'd gained Greg, twice. And she'd gained herself, the real self, the one who was strong enough to survive anything. Penny for your thoughts, Greg said. Just thinking about how lucky I am, Daphne said. Even with the scar, the amnesia, the attempted murder? Especially with all that, Daphne said. Because all of it, every horrible, painful, scary thing, led me here, to this moment, to you, to the life I have now. And I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the fish selling? Greg teased. Especially not the fish selling, Daphne said. That's where I met you, remember? Best fish stand in Atlanta, Greg said. Damn right, Daphne agreed. They sat there under the stars, two people who'd found each other twice, who'd built a life from the ashes of tragedy, who'd chosen love over fear every single time. And they were happy. Daphne lost everything. Her parents, her memories, her career, her identity. But she found herself. The real self. The one who was strong enough to survive, brave enough to start over, and wise enough to know that she could be both the person she was and the person she became. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to choose. You can be brilliant and humble, successful and grounded. A healer, and someone who needs healing. You can honor where you came from while claiming where you're going. Most importantly, moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing life anyway, choosing joy even after tragedy, choosing love even after betrayal, choosing to build something beautiful with the broken pieces. Because that's what survivors do. They don't just survive, they thrive, they rise, they become more than they ever were before. Just like Daphne. Just like Jasmine. Just like the woman who was both and refused to choose. Final CTA. If this story touched you, If Daphne and Greg's journey moved you, if you believe in second chances and love that survives anything, share this story. Share it with someone who's lost themselves and needs to know they can be found again. Comment below and tell me, what's your biggest takeaway from this story? What moment made you cry? What moment made you cheer? Thank you for going on this journey with me. Thank you for believing in Daphne and Greg. Thank you for showing up to see how love wins. Because it does. Love always wins. Subscribe for more stories like this. Hit that notification bell. And remember, you are more than what was done to you. You are who you choose to become.